Test.
Well,
Mic check.
it's 7:10. Okay, I've got 7:10 on my 7:10 already. Yeah. Yeah, I got on my phone, comic time. Just for those in attendance, we have a few people trying to reach us and there's a little bit of technical difficulty. So as soon as we get that resolved, we want this to be an open, transparent process. So we'll just hold off before we get started. So just bear with us just a few minutes, please. Okay, thank you. Well, good evening. I am Tom Burrows, Commissioner at Large, District 2. Tonight, however, I will be acting as Mayor Pro Tem due to the unavailability of Mayor Garner. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that some commissioner staff and the public are attending remotely via Zoom, by phone, or on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak, so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. Please be sure you use and speak directly into a microphone so that the public can hear your comments and an accurate record of the meeting is made. This is critical given the number of remote participants and his current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. If public comments are allowed on an agenda item, comments should be limited to the topic of that item. Per the Commission Rules of Procedure, comments shall not include any rude or derogatory remarks, reflections as to integrity, abusive comments, and statements as to the motives and personalities. I will now call this meeting to order and would ask the clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Hill.
Here.
Kane. We have an absence memo. Lopez.
Here.
Stites.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Burns. We have an absence memo. Ramirez.
Here.
Burrows.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The invocation is given this evening by Chaplain Daniel Freeman, but I just don't see him here today.
I'd be happy to be Daniel Freeman anytime. He's a great person in this community, but he can't be here, so they asked me to sub.
Thank you. Great substitute, sister. Please, if you'll all rise and please give our attention for the invocation this evening by Sister Teresa Banger.
So the Holy Spirit and I prepared this prayer for the Peace Walk on Saturday. By the way, I saw many of you there. There was a mix-up and someone else was called to pray. So when I was asked to sub tonight, I decided to bring this prayer. So I'm asking you to join me in praying for all the peace walkers and our peacekeepers, the KCPD. Let us lift our hearts. Loving, tender God, who we call many names, I believe you walk with us this morning and this evening. Help us to walk with you. May this north wind remind us of how cold it is when our hearts, homes, communities are not at peace. We beg you, gift us with your peace. We beg you, gift our world with peace. Let our sisters and brothers who suffer the violence of war know that we care and know that you care. Please bless the peacekeepers, the police officers in this community. Keep them safe and compassionate in your hands. And tonight, God, I add, please bless our mayor and these commissioners. Help them keep their hearts and minds open to your spirit as they make decisions. I pray in Jesus's name, and the community says, amen, amen.
Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sister. I'll ask the clerk if there are any revisions to tonight's agenda.
There are no revisions to the agenda this evening.
Thank you. We will now proceed with the items on the planning and zoning portion of the agenda. Tonight, we have two distinct parts to our meeting. The planning and zoning portion will be handled, followed by the regular commission meeting. I'll ask the clerk to please read the statement required by state law governing the planning and zoning portion of our meeting, followed by the items of the planning and zoning consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Good evening. We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor CEO Tyrone Garner, Commissioner Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1, Commissioner Tom Burrows, at-large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Bill Burns, District 2, Commissioner Christian Ramirez, District 3, Commissioner Evelyn Hill, District 4, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Phil Lopez, District 6, Commissioner Chuck Stites, District 7, and Commissioner Andrew Davis, District 8. As each petition is called, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before the commission has three options. 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration, together with a statement specifying the reasons for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the planning and zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or others, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on all of the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at 1 vote. I will read the list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the Mayor Pro Tem will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to come to the microphone and provide the agenda item to be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If you're joining us virtually, this is your time to raise your hand, and once acknowledged, provide the agenda item to be set aside. If you contacted the UG Clerk's office, that item will be set aside by the UG Clerk on your behalf. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted on separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Most of the petitions before the commission tonight may be determined by a simple majority vote. However, if protesting property owners representing 20% of the land area within 200 feet of the area in question have signed and filed a protest petition, at least 9 votes by the commission will be required to approve the change of zone petition. A valid protest petition was filed in the clerk's office protesting item change of zone COZ 2023-024, change of zone from R1 single family district to RP5 planned apartment district, to construct a 132 unit apartment complex at 5901 and 5945 Parallel Parkway. The petition represented 22.91% of the property owners. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would, however, remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone, please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. If joining us virtually or by phone, we ask that you mute your phone when not speaking to avoid background noise so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state their views. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record if attending in person. If you're attending virtually, this is your time to raise your hand. When your name is called, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the planning and zoning agenda. At this time, does any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any item on the agenda?
Do any commissioners have disclosures? Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I received communication in support of SUP 2023-122.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. I heard from proponents of B1 SP 2023-122. I apologize. And proponents and opponents of C2 and D1 MPL 2024-001 and PR 2024-003.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. I've received proponent communication for SP 2023-122. I've received both proponent and opponent communication on COZ 2023-024. Proponent and opponent communication on NPL 2023-012 and NPL 2024-001 and PR 2024-003.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, I received opposition and support for SP 2023-122.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Forgot to mention the receiving communication in opposition to MPL 2024-001 and PR 2024-003.
Thank you. Commissioner Stites.
Same as Commissioner Ramirez just now.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk, I've received a COZ 2023-024 in opposition. And then in B1, the SP 2023-122, both in support and opposition. And I believe that's it. I just want to make sure before I move on. That is it. Thank you.
There are no other.
There are no other disclosures. Seeing none.
Okay, I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Change of zone application, item number 1, COZ 2023-034. Gerald Menifee with CAM Design Group. Change of zone from AG Agricultural District to CP2 Planned General Business District to construct a convenience store and fueling station at 9611 State Avenue. Recommended for denial. Item 2, COZ 2024-002. Austin Thompson with Atlas Land Consulting. Change of zone from R Rural Residential District to AG Agricultural District for cattle and a barn at 1200 North 134th Street. Recommended for approval. Item 3, COZ 2024-005. Austin Thompson with Atlas Land Consultants. Change of zone from AG Agricultural District to R1 Single Family District for residential use at 804 South 89th Street. Recommended for approval. Item 4, COZ 2024-006. Brandon Carlson with the Property BR Companies and or affiliates. Change of zone from AG Agricultural District to CP2 Planned General Business District to construct a new urgent care facility at 9400 State Avenue. Recommended for approval. Special use permit applications. Item 1, SP 2023-110. Mark Kaneska with Pick and Pull, renewal of a special use permit to operate an automobile salvage yard at 1142 South 12th Street, recommended for approval for 5 years. Item 2, SP 2024-006, Atif Abbas, renewal of a special use permit to operate a liquor store at 8537 State Avenue, recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 3, SP 2024-007, Samaya Guess, renewal of a special use permit to operate a short-term rental at 2023 North 85th Street, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 4, SP 2024-008, Megan Painter with CHWC Holding Corporation, special use permit to operate a group dwelling at 1026 Ann Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 5, SP 2024-010, Roderick Simmons Jr., special use permit to operate a short-term rental at 2614 South 27th Street, recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 6, SP 2024-011, Juan Ramirez, special use permit for used auto sales at 401 Kansas Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 7, SP 2024-012, Nadia Griffith, renewal of a special use permit to operate a drinking establishment with live entertainment at 508 Kansas Avenue, recommended for approval for 1 year. Master Plan Amendment Application. Item 1, MPL 2023-019, Gerald Menifee with CAM Design Group, Master Plan Amendment from Business Park to Commercial to construct a convenience store and fueling station at 9611 State Avenue, recommended for denial. Plan Review Application. Item 1, PR 2024-006, David Lutz, preliminary plan review to construct a new drive-through bank at 7908 State Avenue, recommended for approval. Miscellaneous ordinances. Item number 1, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a non-owner occupied short-term rental at 3059 to 3065 Francis Street, recommended for approval. Now, item 2, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a short-term rental at 204 Orchard Street on the 2nd floor, recommended for approval. Item 3, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a drinking establishment on the 1st floor at 204 Orchard Street, recommended for approval. Item 4, an ordinance vacating utility easement at 11471 Webster Avenue, recommended for approval. This represents all of the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we need to back up just one more item, if I may. Commissioner Stites.
Yes, Stites District 7. I inadvertently overlooked COZ 2024-006 that I had a communication with. I didn't realize that until you read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Does any member of the commission or the county administrator or the public wish to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by one vote and follow the recommendation of the planning commission. Has anyone contacted the clerk's office and asked an item be set aside?
No one has contacted the clerk's office. We do have 2 hands raised online.
Okay. I will ask if anyone, you want to recognize those online, Madam
Okay.
Clerk?
Our first individual is Louise Lynch. Ms. Lynch,
Hello. Yes,
go ahead.
I'd like to set aside the items for the short-term rentals.
Ms. Lynch, which one did you want to set aside?
The one on Francis Street. And basically all the short-term rentals.
You'll need to choose one, please,
Why one?
council.
Yes, as I've explained previously, the ordinance allows a member of the public to remove an item singular.
It doesn't say just a item. It says and, it doesn't say just a. I also checked that with the Kansas Bar Association, And your interpretation of that is absolutely incorrect.
Ms. Lynch, did you say you wanted to remove the special use permit ordinance for 3059-3065 Francis Street?
I wanted to remove all of the ones for short-term rental.
Yes. As specified in the charter, the unified government attorney gives the opinion on the procedures, and that is me, and it is an item singular. So if there's an item you'd like to remove, please let the clerk know.
Yes, you are able to have an opinion, but what is in black and white, it is the ordinance.
Okay.
And it
You-
is what the rule is. It is not open to interpretation. It's the way it's written.
Ma'am, if you'd like to remove an item, please let the clerk know. Otherwise,
I'd like to remove the items for short-term rentals. As I have stated, I have contacted Kansas Bar and your interpretation is incorrect.
Yeah. Ms. Lynch, I believe your request has been granted to pull the one from Francis Street, I believe. Is that the one that you requested initially?
I requested all of them for short-term rental, beginning with the Francis Street one.
As legal has given its opinion, Ms. Lynch, I'm going to go ahead and move forward so that we can conduct the people's business. You can comment on others as they come forward, but we're going to go item. We'll do the Francis Street. We'll pull it initially.
Our next speaker is Nanette Hobbs. Ms. Hobbs?
Yes, so first off, I'd like to say that I have been trying to get online since 6:40 p.m. and I've had nothing but problems trying to log in. But I would like to pull all items under the master plan amendment due to the fact that there was no master plan town hall according to the ordinance that is stated under Wyandotte County. So all master plan amendment applications need to be pulled and put aside due to the fact that there was no town hall as according to the ordinance.
Ma'am, I'm identifying that as master plan amendment 2023-019 for property at 9611 State Avenue. Is that correct?
So there's actually a couple of them, master plan amendment application. From what I'm looking at, 2023-012 and then 2024-01. Both
Ma'am,
of
those are already on the non-consent agenda. Those will be heard separately. The only one we have on consent agenda is for property located at 9611 State Avenue. You wish to pull that one from the consent agenda?
please.
I'm sorry, say again.
Could you please pull that?
Okay. We have no other hands raised online.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll ask anyone in attendance if they'd like to set aside an item. If so, please state your name and city for the record and the agenda of the item to be set aside. Please let the record show no one stepped forward. I'll ask the clerk if anyone joining virtually has their hands raised to set aside an item, which we've already dealt with. Moving on to, I will entertain a motion for approval of the planning and zoning consent calendar excluding the set asides.
Move to approve all remaining items as submitted.
Bynum, second.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Would you please call roll?
Roll call. Hill,
Aye.
Lopez,
No.
Stites. Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Townsend. Ramirez.
Aye.
The vote is 6-1. The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now I'll ask staff to make any opening comments in reference to those that were set aside. I believe the first item was, I'm sorry, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to ask a question, a point of order and clarification as to whether the Pro Tem will vote or not. I think this was something that was raised by Commissioner Kane, but I didn't get where he was going with it. So I looked at the rules of procedure, and there are two that seem to indicate that anyone serving as Mayor Pro Tem would not be deprived of their rights as a commissioner. And certainly the right to vote is one of the main ones. I think that was section 703 of the Rules of Procedure, Unified Government Rules of Procedure, Appendix C. And then in section 108, it says the Mayor Pro Tem shall cast the last vote. So I would just like legal clarification on this. Mayor Pro Tem has done a great job. This is the longest since I've been here that we've had a Pro Tem mayor. So a lot of these procedures are new in terms of how we're acting them. And so it's a matter of clarity. We've never come across these situations before. Thank you.
Legal?
Yes, that is correct. We have not come across this before. The Mayor Pro Tem certainly has the right to vote. If he does, he shall vote last. There will certainly be instances where he will have to vote if there are not enough votes. Whether or not he is required to vote. It says shall always vote last. I'm not sure. I would have to dive into that to see if that's an actual requirement. We haven't been requiring it, but it hasn't affected the outcome of any of the matters.
Okay, so I'm still not clear because, and the reason I ask is because the language in those two talk about shall as though it's not.
It does, and we may have overlooked, it does, and we may have overlooked that. Again, certainly he can vote and he perhaps should be voting. So, and I apologize if I have not brought that forward previously.
So what is legal's position?
I think that it probably would be best for the Mayor Pro Tem to vote, given that 108.
Okay.
And I do think that there will be other instances when it would absolutely be mandatory, but I think that it would be best for him to vote. And I apologize for not bringing that forward previously.
This is all a lot of new territory for us because like I said, we've had the longest serving Pro Tem and he's done great in very difficult circumstances, but I just want to know how we move forward with this. Thank you.
I'll respond as we move forward. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. The first item up is I'll ask staff to make opening comments in reference to the first item pulled on the consent calendar.
Mayor Pro Tem, would you like me to read the item?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Would you like me to read the item?
Please.
Okay. This is item number under miscellaneous ordinances, item number 1, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a non-owner occupied short-term rental at 3059 to 3065 Francis Street.
Gunnar Hand, this Director of Planning and Urban Design. This item under miscellaneous of the formerly consent agenda that was pulled is ordinance publication. This case has already been approved by the City Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners. This is to authorize the publication of the ordinance so that it goes into the newspaper. And we can become official as per state law.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. I'll ask the applicant or representative to present their application if they're here. And if they are, please state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to Is there anyone present who would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, nobody came forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in favor of this item? If so, please raise your hand and be acknowledged.
No hands are raised at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll ask the clerk if she's received any direct notification from the public who wish to express their comments in opposition to this item.
No comments were received.
Thank you. I'll ask if anyone's present who would like to speak in opposition to this item. Let the record show nobody stepped forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in opposition to this item? If so, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. Once acknowledged, you may state your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
No hands are raised at this time.
Are we sure? Somebody asked to have it pulled. Okay. I will now move to item number 2. Do you want me to close individually, clerk? Okay, I will now close the public hearing on COZ 2023-034 and MPL 2023-019. The ordinance. Oh. Okay, all right, thank you. Correct that. Thank you. Okay, that's on the ordinance, just for, I know I confused the audience. I was looking at the screen and not the script, so I apologize for causing any confusion. Madam Clerk, moving on.
The item that was pulled was ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a non-owner occupied short-term rental at 3059 to 3065 Francis Street. Mayor Pro Tem, if you've closed the public hearing, you can now entertain a motion.
Thank you. Committee, any comments? Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. What is the number for that item? Because this is a bit confusing.
Item E1.
E1.
E1 on the former consent agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Townsend, is that it? Okay, I'd entertain a motion. If there's no other questions or comments.
Move to approve.
Bynum, second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
No.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Burrows.
I'm not voting. Haven't voted since I've been Mayor Pro Tem. I'm not going to start now.
Vote carries 6-1.
This takes us to item 2.
Item 2 is Master Plan Amendment MPL 2023-019. Gerald Menifee with CAM Design Group. Master Plan Amendment from Business Park to Commercial to construct a convenience store and fueling station at 9611 State Avenue. Recommended for denial.
I'll ask staff, please give an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. This case is being heard in conjunction with changes zone 2023-034. Again, MPL 2023-019 was pulled from the consent agenda. Excuse me. This is in the Prairie, Delaware Piper area plan. Staff received no letters of support, no letters in opposition. There's some older notices of violation from the property, which you can see has mostly been undeveloped for quite some time. When it was vacant, staff agrees with Planning Commission, recommends denial due to the fact that they're trying to build a gas station with a septic tank, which is not recommended by the Health Department or Public Works, and as well as they provided a deficient traffic study and did not make the updates requested by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Thank you. I'll ask the applicant or representative to present their application. Please state your name and address for the record if anyone's here. Let the record show nobody stepped forward. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this item? Let the record show nobody step forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in favor of this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll ask the clerk if she has received any direct notification from the public who wish to express their comments in opposition to this item.
No comments received.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this item? Let the record show nobody stepping forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in opposition to this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing. Petitioner's not here to make any closing comments. Any members of the commission have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Oh, excuse me. Correct, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. Mr. Hand, just a quick question. I see this is recommended for denial. If you can recall, what was the reasoning of the planning commission for denial?
Governor Hand, Director of Planning and Design, because they had an insufficient traffic study and because they're trying to build it without sewer.
Oh, okay.
Putting a septic tank next to a fuel storage tank is not recommended by the Public Works or Public Health Department.
Okay. Thank you. Just want to get some clarity. Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And again, for clarity, this is a vote on which item number?
Item C1, Master Plan Amendment. Bottom of page 3.
It's tied together with A1 that
Okay.
changes zone.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
No, go ahead.
Did you have any other questions?
Well, no, I do want to say as a point of order, I would like, and I want to hold up these proceedings further, but I would like to go on the record and ask for a written clarification by a legal opinion on voting of the pro tem. I understand that maybe votes had not been cast in the past, but I guess my concern is in the presence of this, these particular sections of the procedure that I inquired about, I'd like for legal to give us a written opinion at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend. And I
Yes.
do appreciate your questions in reference to my ability to vote. It has been brought to my attention by some of the people in my district that I wasn't voting. And I was advised at that time that I didn't have to vote being as mayor pro tem unless it was a tie. I'm not going to go back and change my position now and vote for items that I haven't had a privilege to vote for my particular district. I think it would be unfair to my constituents to change that position at this time so late in the game, but I do appreciate you bringing that forward.
Right, thank you. And like I said, I just became aware of by study language in the rules of procedure that seemed to indicate that it wasn't an elective decision by the pro tem. So we've got a path forward. So thank you.
Thank you. I think as it was stated, we are in uncharted waters. And so I think we're all learning as we move along here, but I do appreciate you looking at the short ordinances and charter. Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, I was just getting some response from some outsiders that they were trying to raise their hands and they can't, and then the people online cannot hear very well. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Commissioner, do you know who it is? We can recognize them.
Commissioner Lopez, do you know who it was?
I think her name is Nettie, I think. Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe that's it.
Ms. Hobbs?
Yes, thank you. So there's a lot of errors and issues on my end. I cannot hear, but maybe 50% of what you guys are saying. You guys literally sound like robots on my end. And I have refreshed and I've been trying to do this since 6:40 p.m. I literally cannot hear anything you guys are saying. I tried to raise my hand and I cannot.
Madam Clerk, we do have her online now. Was there something she cares to express?
Ms. Hobbs, did you need to speak on this item?
Can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
No, I am unmuted.
We can hear you now, Ms. Hans.
Ms.
Oh,
Hall, go ahead with your comments.
so I cannot hear half of what you guys are saying. You guys literally sound like robots on my end. It's not my connection. I've got two other people that are in different locations. We cannot hear you nor understand you.
Ms. Hobbs, did you need to address this item?
We are getting some feedback in the back room. Is there somebody in the back room that can guide us as to Ms. Hans's comments? Or can they hear what's going on back there?
If I may, Mayor,
Please, Commissioner Stites.
I've got 5 people that have texted me now and says they're having 0 issues. They can hear just fine. It must be on that person's end.
Thank you, Commissioner Stites. Ms. Hans, one more time. Are you able to hear us? We do want to give you an opportunity. Commissioner Lopez?
Yeah, if I may, I'm unprofessional opinion, but I think the storms might have a lot to do with this too. I don't know if, I mean, wherever she's at, you know, versus the metropolitan area.
Well, we're gonna continue to move forward. I'm getting texts also from people within the community said they're hearing just fine and that they're receiving the information. So I do want to move forward. We do have other people here. I believe that we have closed the public hearing on this item. There's been a motion and a second. I don't believe.
No motion.
Madam Clerk, did we do the roll call?
I don't know.
I thought we had a motion. Okay. Okay, I'd entertain a motion. Yeah, to prove the denial
Fine.
that we're dealing with.
Motion to approve the denial of the item.
Stites second.
Thank you. I believe that's staff's recommendation.
Yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Roll call. Hill,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Stites, Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being patient. So with the rain and the storm, we just want to make sure that we're allowing people to speak that would like to speak in reference to their items. This now takes us to our planning and zoning non-consent agenda. And that is our next order of business. The first item under our non-consent agenda is a change of zone from R1 Single Family District to RP5 Planned Apartment District, and a master plan amendment from low density residential to high density residential. These items are related. However, we will need to vote on each item separately. I will remind the commission that a valid protest position has been filed. Therefore, it will take 9 votes of the commission to approve the items. And clerk, I would ask that you read both items and then I will move to legal.
Thank you. First item under our non-consent is change of zone application COZ 2023-024. Chris Elsley with the Prime Company. Change of zone from R1 Single Family District to RP5 Planned Apartment District to construct a 132 unit apartment complex at 5901 and 5945 Parallel Parkway. Recommended for approval with a vote of 7-2. The related item is Master Plan Amendment MPL 2023-012. Master Plan Amendment from low density residential to high density residential at 5901 and 5945 Parallel Parkway. Recommended for approval with a vote of 7-2.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before I go to legal, I would recognize Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My question is, we have 8 people here. And so what, obviously we can't have a vote of 9 achieved tonight on the item. So is there a path forward for the applicant or not?
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. That's why I was going to go directly to legal. Legal, please.
Yes, it would not, you could, with a vote of 6, you could move to continue it to the next planning and zoning meeting.
Could you be a little more clear with that, legal, please, Counselor? It's hard to hear back here.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's hard to be facing away from you. So the commission it would only take 6 votes to move to hold it over. And so that is one option the commission has, since there are not 9 members present. So with 6 votes, it could be held over to the next meeting, the next planning and zoning.
So if I understand correctly, 6 votes to take whatever action we choose to take, except for the override. It would take 8 votes or 9 votes to override.
9 votes to override.
Thank you for the clarification. Commission, any comments? Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. When you say we can hold it, are you saying return it to the Planning and Zoning Commission or hold it to the next full commission planning and zoning meeting?
The commission could choose to do either one. If they had a question that or an issue that they wanted looked at, they could move to send it back. I don't believe it's been sent back previously. I would defer to Mr. Hand. He says no. So it could be if you had something you wanted looked at, you could send it back or you could hold it over.
Committee, is there a preference? I would strongly suggest, committee, the fact that we can't do the we don't have 9 commissioners here this evening. Even if I was to take action to vote, it would not be fair and equitable to those that may have input that aren't here this evening. We're down 2 members as well as the mayor. And so I would yield to a suggestion from the committee. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I would agree. I feel like we don't have our full options tonight. We're not given our full options tonight. So I think I would feel more comfortable holding over till we have all our members back, or at least a 9th member back, so that we're given all options and not shorted one.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may.
Yes, please.
Staff was in contact with the applicant and they're amenable to a holdover. I would also note that there are people in the audience today who are here to speak on this item if you wanted to hear them.
It's legal. If we choose to hold this over, there will be no action tonight. Would they have to come back, or could we hold public hearing tonight for their convenience?
But you could hold it, or you could take public hearing this evening and then reopen it prior to the vote. So yes, you could take that comment this evening. So
Okay.
you could open it and then delay the vote.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Davis.
I would prefer, because I know a lot of folks have showed up to speak and voice their opinion about this project. And I know we also have a protest petition. So I know all of our options are not available to us, but just to honor people's time to show up, I do think it would be fair to at the very least offer the opportunity to provide public comment, with the understanding that we don't have all of the options available and we'll probably hold this over. But I still would like to hear from the public if my colleagues are amenable to that. Thank you.
Could I see a show of hands, all that are here this evening for this item? Thank you. I think the prudent thing to do would be to have you voice your opinions this evening. You've come here in light of the weather and the conditions outside. The commission is respectful of your presence, and we will open up public hearing either in support or opposition. So as I move forward, please listen and raise your hand if you can't get up quick enough, but please let me know if you want to speak to it when I get to that point of the agenda. Commissioner Stites.
Stites District 7. I just had a quick question, and if you want me to ask it after they speak, I can, or I can ask it now. But or they can answer, legal can answer. On the protest petition, could you walk through that again? There would have to be 9. I just want to make sure I have that accurate in my mind here.
Yes, because there was a valid protest petition filed, it would take 9 votes to approve the item.
Okay, so what we're saying then is we're potentially going to hold it over to where we have at least that number to have that option on the table. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll ask staff to make some opening remarks. Gunner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. As the clerk mentioned, this change of zone is being heard in conjunction with Master Plan Amendment 2023-012. That's the applicants requesting from low to high density residential from R1 zoning, single family to RP5 apartment zoning for 132 unit apartment complex. Excuse me, this is in the Plan KCK area in sort of the Midtown neighborhood just off Parallel Parkway. Excuse me. At the Planning Commission hearing, we had received one person in support. There was opposition. There are no notices of violation on this undeveloped parcel. Staff agrees with Planning Commission, recommends approval with conditions, including the applicant would have to come back and file their final plat, complete a final development plan, and follow the multifamily design guidelines.
We'll take these individually. We'll move on. I'll ask the applicant or the representative to present the application. Should you please to do so, the applicant. Let us show nobody's stepping forward. I will now open the public hearing and ask if there are any notifications. Oh, we do have him online. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please.
Mr. Adrian.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. Certainly this is a little bit of, as I think we figured out, a little bit of an interesting learning experience tonight. So I'm not sure if it is best for me to, it sounds like you guys are planning to hold this over. I'd like to present to the entire commission that would be voting on this. So I'm not sure if it makes sense for me to present this same information twice. I guess I'd take feedback from the commission on how you'd prefer me to move forward with that.
Madam Clerk, who are we referring to?
Josh Adrian with the Prime Company.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Adrian, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you just fine.
Mr. Adrian, we're providing you the opportunity to speak this evening. It's your prerogative if you want to share with us tonight. We don't know what action we're going to take, but if I'm reading the commission correctly, there will probably be a motion moving forward later to hold this over. So it's your prerogative. We are going to allow the public to speak. If you want to present your position, you can this evening, or you can hold it and wait till the next meeting, should it move forward.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fine. We only had 2 people come out to speak against our project at the Planning Commission. So when we got this petition against ours, was kind of surprised. So I think I'd actually really just like to hear from, like you guys hear from the residents, what they have to say, and then we'll discuss hopefully at the next meeting.
Thank you. I will now open it to public hearing. I'll ask the clerk if there are any notifications were received from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item.
No comments were received.
Thank you. I'll ask if anyone present would like to speak in favor of this item. Let the record show nobody stepped forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in favor of this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you. Now I'll ask the clerk if there are any notifications received from the public who wish to express their opposition to this item.
No comments were received.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this item? If so, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments. please make your way up to the front row and Madam Clerk, was there a list of sign-ins to speak?
There was not.
Okay, so it's even more important that you let's state your name and place of residence. this
No
evening.
worries, I'll speak slowly.
Is a microphone on?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Frenchie Hooks. I live at 1817 North 62nd Street. Countryside West is where I live, and I'm the president of the Homes Association there. I'm here in opposition to this project. It unfortunately isn't within 200 feet of our house, but it does impact our neighborhood tremendously because it's right at the corner. The corner of Meadowlark Lane and 59th Street is just in my backyard, basically. My husband and I have lived there for 14 years, and it's probably the biggest investment we've ever had is our home. And we look forward to coming home and our wonderful neighborhood and our neighbors. I believe this project with all the additional 304 units would cause us to have a lot of discomfort. There's a saturation. If we want to look at apartments, we can walk a half a block down the street and you'll see apartments. You'll walk half a block to the south, you'll see apartments. So we know what apartment life can do to a community because we see it on a daily basis. Unfortunately, it's not where we want to live in our community. We want our community to be a little bit less crowded. In our community right now, from my house, there is about 12 to 15 apartment complexes in a 13-mile radius. And to me, that is a lot of saturation for one area. My concern with this is that we're going from a single family to apartments. Isn't there like a buffer in between where we could do like townhouses or condos or something of that nature in between, which wouldn't be such a dramatic change? I don't think it would actually look really nice. That area is very nice and it would be an addition to the community. But I think apartments is a far reach. We have apartments around there, a lot of them. So personally, I think it would cause us a lot of discomfort. There's additional traffic. If I remember correctly, the level of service, the hierarchy delay currently is at C-, I believe. And with this additional 300 units, with the unit that's going to happen at 59th and State, that's going to give us a large amount of traffic. I don't believe that we are going to have a study done with the traffic engineer because my community, I mean, my homes association is 33 houses. We couldn't afford that. But I believe that that's going to really impact us. We walk the neighborhood and talk to the people that will be
remaining.
I'm sorry, will be within the 200, and a lot of them didn't have a clue as to what was going on. So I made them aware. Unfortunately, when I turned all my information in for the neighborhood, I forgot to get their phone numbers. So I didn't contact them again. So a lot of those people that did 200 yards, they did not come because they probably were not aware. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your vote against it, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Claudine Horton. I live at 1822 North 62nd Street. I am also an officer of the Homeowners Association, and I'd like to say to all of you this evening, I'd like to concur with Mrs. Hooks. I too am in total disagreement, and for the reasons that has been and are aforementioned. I don't know a great deal about stopping, period. But I am fact finding and I'm finding out a lot of information that will be reconcile to why we're such opposers of this event. I would like for you to take into consideration not only this, but where you live and what impact something like this would have on your residential area and how much of an effect it would have on you. Just consider the hearts and souls of others. We have paid. I'm a resident. I've been there for 55 years, 55. And maybe that's a little bit long, but I call it home. because I love the atmosphere, just like you do in your own private homes. So consider these facts and make sure that you take into consideration you too one day might be victims.
Thank you. Please, we'll want to make sure that we give proper decorum to our speakers and to the process. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wilbert Horton. My wife, you just spoke, but we moved there in 1968. And since we've been there, there's been several single homes built. And I'm concerned about the safety. I'm in my late 80s. I have several members that are 90 years and older. Consider your parents, when you want safety for them. So we like to keep it as a single dwelling community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horton.
Hi, everyone. My name is William C. Poole. I live at 6223 Troop Avenue in the same area. I'm a 29-year vet. I deal with chronic PTSD. When I looked for my home, I was looking for the right spot for me to help me to deal with what I have to live with for the rest of my life. And since I've been at my address 7 years now, and I love it. It's quiet. It helps me a lot. You know, we have a filling station down the street where they used to have a lot of traffic, and it was dealing from the schools and stuff. And I would go down there sometimes and have to deal with a bunch of, you know, rudy things, and I had to make a complaint. Well, we finally got that stopped, you know, but I want to live peacefully, you know, and it's hard being out here in civilian life. And, you know, we lose over 20 vets a day in suicide. I am a survivor of that. And I've been retired 15 years. And it would really, really, really bother me, and not just me, my wife and the others in our neighborhood, to have more traffic. Now, I am with people being able to live in, you know, affordable homes and things like that. I'm with that, okay? I'm a combat vet, and security is my main concern. Because when you put these big buildings in there and they're not being monitored securely, you know, surveillance and all that, it festers. And you let all kinds of elements in there until it gets out of control. And then we got the police force running in and out of there when we could avoid these things, you know, and it's all about security. And just think about that, because like she was saying, you wouldn't want that around your home. I have grandchildren. Thank you.
This is Mr. Poole, correct? Mr. Poole, thank you for your service and your comments. Anyone else care to speak in opposition to this item that is present here this evening? Let the record show nobody else is stepping forward. I will ask, is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in opposition to this item?
We have Mrs. Clark online. Mrs. Clark, if you'd state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Margaret Beatrice Clark, and I reside at 1905 North 60th Street. The front of my property actually faces the woods that is within 200 feet of this property. 200 feet is like 0.038 of a mile. So it's pretty close. When I bought an acre and a half here in Kansas City, Kansas, I just thought I would have more peace than having about 300 people or so, maybe more, dropped in my front yard. So I'm definitely opposed to this. I am concerned about the traffic. That is a pretty high traffic intersection. as well as how it's going to affect any kind of sewer or water line drainage, even just noise, crime rate, property values. There's just so many things that I'm sitting here wondering how this is going to turn out in my front yard. So thank you for your time. I just wanted to make sure that I commented that this is definitely something I'm opposed to.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Is there anyone else online, Madam Clerk?
No other hands are raised.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing and ask the petitioner if he would like to make any closing comments. Mr. Adrian? Okay. Do any members of the commission have any questions or comments?
Could you say that again, Mr. Gardner?
That's Mr. Adrian.
Yeah. Mr. Adrian, would you care to have any closing comments?
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I think that we would like to encourage the commission to just grant a continuance on this, and that we can look at this in a month.
Okay, thank you. Legal, the petitioner can ask to hold this over, correct? Doesn't take, the commission can ask for that holdover. Gunner, is it, or legal, one of you?
Well, you've had the hearing. The commission would need to vote on that request at this point, but he certainly can make that request.
Okay. Mr. Adrian, is it your request that we hold this over for 30 days?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. Is there a motion to do so, committee? Any comments from the committee? Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. And thank you everyone that has come out. This project is in my district, and I found out literally this morning that there was a valid protest petition. And so it took me by surprise that this was there. And so I would love to meet with you all to discuss this project and its impact if you all would be willing and able. I do want to get just some clarity. How many units are we talking for this project? I've heard 304, then I've also heard 132. Mr. Hand, can you provide just some clarification?
It's 132.
132, okay. And then was there a traffic study attached to this, or is that in process?
Yes, it's still in process. It's being reviewed by Public Works.
Okay, cool. So hopefully by the time a month continuance is done, we will have a traffic study, so you all do not have to pay for that or anything, for us to look at the impact of that. If there aren't any other questions, I will move for a continuance, for a holdover for this to the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Fine, I'm second.
Commission, we have a motion and a second, Madam Clerk. I ask you to please call roll to hold it over for till the next Planning and Zoning meeting for clarification.
And to clarify, this is for change of zone 2023-024.
Yes, well, do we need to do two votes? Okay, so yes, it is for that item, yes.
Thank you. Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to our, isn't there a second item associated
Yes.
to this?
Mayor Pro Tem, I would move that we hold item C1 Master Plan Amendment MPL 2023-012 to the next full commission planning and zoning meeting.
Davis second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any comments, concerns? Madam Clerk, please call roll. Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Davis? Nope. Okay. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I believe that takes us to the change of zone. Item number A2 is a request for a change of zone from R1B Single Family District to AG Agricultural District. Clerk, please read the item.
Item COZ 2024-004, Fred Del Toro. Change of zone from R1B Single Family District to AG Agricultural District. To keep animals on the property at 3612 Emmons Drive, recommended for denial with a 6-4 vote.
Legal, does this fall into the same category as the other two items we just discussed in reference to the amount of votes it would take?
This would take, so it's, wait a minute, which one we are? This one is recommended for denial. So to override that would take 8 votes.
Okay.
If the commission wanted to approve the application or the change, then it would take 8 votes.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. As noted, this changes zone from R1 single family to agricultural for agricultural uses. This is in the planned KCK area in the Sorter Drive neighborhood north of Leavenworth Road. Staff received no letters of support, no letters of opposition. There are multiple notices of violation on the property. The staff agrees with Planning Commission, recommends denial. The reason for denial is a bunch of unpermitted accessory structures and that the property, specifically comments from the Conservation District, was probably only good for timber. The soil is such that the type of large livestock Mr. Del Toro is requesting to put on the property would not have enough grazing land. So it's very rocky too. So they're without serious remediation or importing of soil, having some sort of field for large livestock would be unavailable at this location. And again, there are active open cases at this property.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. I don't mean to get ahead of the process, but I'm kind of looking at Commissioner Townsend and also Mr. Hand, because I remember this name as a gentleman who was seeking a land bank parcel, and we were negotiating with him to find a different land bank parcel that was more suitable for what it was he was trying to do. Now, are you remembering that? And am I wrong?
I do remember Mr. Del Toro. I'm not exactly sure without looking back. It's been several years if this was the swap out piece of property. Mr. Del Toro had purchased through a tax sale several plots of land that align the road as you head toward the Quindaro Cemetery. And because it's the significance of that property, there was a swap off for property of similar size. I'm not going to swear without looking back 2 years ago, that was it. I think the issue though is whether or not what he's asking to do with the particular property meets codes or not. So this may or may not have been the same piece of property, but I do remember Mr. Del Toro and a swap that was made. So.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. Mr. Del Toro has been an applicant before. He's also been a representative for others who have sought to go through the process he's gone through in the past for similar agricultural conversions. And yes, he has been in the process, has also gone through the land bank process.
And is this the property that we helped him identify when the other one was not appropriate?
No, this is just a property he acquired on his own.
Okay. Is there a remedy, a foreseeable remedy for what he would like to do at this property? I know you said unpermitted structures, but also it's not suitable for the kind of animals that he's keeping or wanting to keep.
Yeah, I mean, animal control obviously, excuse me, was present at the site visit with staff as well, as you can see in these pictures, and they had some serious issues. So.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Townsend?
Is it possible with this, since it's the first time this item has been before the committee, to hold this over as well for action at the next meeting of this body?
If that's the motion and the direction the commission chooses to take, it'd just take a motion and second, and then we vote like we did on the last one.
Okay, well.
I would think,
that-
if
well,
I'm
and-
wrong, please correct me, legal.
And the
okay.
other part
Mr.
of that
Broadus?
is, if someone if a motion was made to override the decision, we can't fully execute that because of the numbers that are made. So again, then I would make the motion that this item be held over to the next meeting of this body.
David, second.
Madam Clerk, if I may, and legal, I'm sorry, legal, if I may. The motion has been made before I've asked for public comment.
So you could continue the entire item.
And then entertain the motion.
Yes.
Thank you.
And technically, this does take 8 votes, so this might be one where normally the mayor would have to vote, thereby the mayor pro tem would also have to vote if it were voted on this evening.
Okay.
Obviously, it can be continued as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. I'm a bit puzzled by what council just said. It would take 8 votes. The motion is just to,
If I wanted to clarify that if it was to override, this only takes
Oh.
8 instead of the 9 votes.
yeah, thank you.
I want to go ahead and move forward as the petitioner online or present that would like to speak to this item. Make some opening comments.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mr. Del Toro.
Good evening. My name is Fred Del Toro. My property address is 3612 Amos Drive, Kansas City, Kansas 66104. Yeah, I'm seeking to change the zone, and the other property that was swapped out unfortunately had some big pipelines. I had received some letters from a pipeline company that it went right through the property. And this property was my dad's and my brother's, and it's since been now under my name and my brother. This is roughly around 7 acres. I have 3 horses up there and about 9 chickens. I've been trying to get in communication with the conservation department. I know it's heavily wooded, but I'm trying to see if there can come some kind of agreement, or if I can get some guidance. I don't want to graze the whole area. I just want to thin out the trees. That way the animals can walk around more freely. I go to the property every morning and every evening. Family and friends go out throughout the day. I have trail cameras that I can see kind of what's going on out there, get notifications on my phone. And yes, I've come before helping translate or interpret to folks that speak Spanish and have gotten a code of violations letter, or they're going through the process, either getting a variance or just changing the zone. So I've helped with that process. I kind of learned just, I guess, on the fly, but just attending, and people somehow get my phone number, and I've helped them out in the past. And then regarding the property overall, the change of zone, I've noticed that for those individuals that I've helped out in the past, they've opened up the area. It's been heavily wooded, and they get violations, and then they go through the process, and they've been able to get approved. And just recently this year, I've been approached by a neighbor and then another individual. One of them is going through a process that will be heard next month, I believe. Another one is just a code of violations, just communicating with inspectors. And so I didn't feel like it was correct for me to keep helping out without me being on that end and giving advice or helping them out go through the process if I'm not doing that on my end. So that's why I started the application process this year. With just starting the application process just last month or in March, I had an animal control go up there and other individuals go. They saw my animals are well fed. They saw their feed, their hay and water access at all times. And I got the violations just in March. So I'm trying to work through those as well. This property has been a family gathering. Friends go up, their nephews. They learn about the horses, responsibilities, and chores. The little ones, my nephews and friends' kids. And it's a place that when we grow older, when they grow older, I wish they would go out there and kind of just stay out of trouble whenever they get to the teenage years. Overall, I appreciate you all listening today or listening to my end, and thanks. And if you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to ask away.
Thank you, Mr. Del Toro. I will now open the public hearing and ask the clerk if there are any notifications received from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item.
No comments were received.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this item? Let the record show nobody step forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in favor of this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now ask the clerk for notifications received from the public who wish to express their comments in opposition to this item.
No comments were received.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this item? Let the record show nobody step forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in opposition to this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments? Mr. Del Toro?
No, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do any member of the commission have any comments, questions? Commissioner Stites.
District 7. So I got a question, Gunner. So how long, when the violations, I think he stated that it was in March that the violations occurred. Is that, do you know how long the codes violations have been, or there's active open cases?
Gunner Hand, Director of Planning and Design. Most of the cases actually were open during the site visit for this change of zone recommendation. So typically planning staff does a site visit of all applications. Occasionally we bring others depending on whether they need to see it, want to see it, there's issues, so on and so forth. So we brought animal control, NRC, and a couple others to this location, and that's when those notices of violation were issued. I don't think any enforcement action has happened because technically, aside from having to get retroactive building permits, if it were to be approved, the change of zone would address a lot of those violations. Accessory structures without a primary structure, no building permits, things of that nature. The general
Okay.
care of the property, or there's like rubbish on the ground, stuff like that. Those kinds of code violations.
So the question that I'd have would be for Mr. Del Toro now. What has been done to correct those violations since you've been noticed?
I've cleaned out the area. There was some tires in the property, just some debris, rubbish around the property up in the entrance, and then by where I have the horses are kind of the general open area. So that's been cleaned out. A good portion of the violations have been with the accessory structures, and since I'm going through the application process, I'm waiting to see how it kind of all plays out. There is a house that used to be in the area. It's not habitable. It looks like it was. I'm not sure what happened. That's when I bought the property. It's been like it's. I'm not sure if it went through or whatnot. So that's been boarded up already. But majority of these are the debris and structures.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments, questions from the commission? I believe we did have a motion, and I believe it was a motion and a second to approve item A2, a change of zone for 2024
to hold it.
to hold it over. Thank you for holding over till next planning and zoning meeting. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Madam Clerk, do we have that motion?
We do.
Okay, I'd ask clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Vote is 6-1. The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This takes us to B1, the next item. That's SP 2023-120 True with Andrew C. Mall. Item B1 is a request for a special use permit to operate a short-term rental. Clerk, please read the item.
Item number SP 2023-122 Andrew Mall. Special use permit to operate a short-term rental at 6115 Oak Grove Road. Recommended for approval for 1 year with a vote of 6-4.
Thank you. I'll ask staff to make some opening remarks. Mr. Hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. This is a special use permit for a short-term rental, non-owner occupied. There is a resident, excuse me, on the property, but that resident is not associated with this special use permit or the operation of the potential proposed short-term rental. Excuse me, this is in the Plant KCK area in the Turner neighborhood. Staff had received no letters in support, letters in opposition. We did actually have one opposition turn into a support between Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners this evening. And that was one of the property owners that you'll probably hear from the applicant and others tonight. The one directly actually to the north here was previously in opposition, changed their letter to say approval after the Planning Commission hearing. This is the property that the access agreement exists to access the property to the south, which is landlocked. So the subject property is landlocked. This is the owner who has the access agreement with Mr. Mall, has changed their opposition into support. Staff, City Planning Commission recommends approval for 1 year with conditions. It's a smaller short-term rental. So 3 people off at any one time, 2 cars off street. This is one of those short-term rentals that we had not anticipated when we wrote the ordinance last May. It is something that we will bring up with the Planning Commission next month at our annual review of them of the short-term rental ordinance. While there are, as I understand it, probably hundreds of landlocked parcels in Kansas City, Kansas, we just never come across one yet with a short-term rental. And so staff had recommended denial of this case because of the access issue through other people's property.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant or representative to present the application. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Mall and I live at 4776 Black Swan Drive in Shawnee. The subject property I purchased with my wife in 2004 and was my home for 14 years or so until my family outgrew the home. I moved my mother-in-law and father-in-law in. The home, when we purchased it, was basically already set up as 2 different living spaces, if you will. It had a kitchenette downstairs and a separate bathroom. And so when my father-in-law passed away in 2020, the maintenance of 10 acres and that home got a little overwhelming. Not to mention the easement driveway, which I have provided some information at the last meeting, showing in the last 4 years, roughly a little over $10,000 just spent on the driveway alone. And again, I've owned it since 2004. So thousands of dollars spent on maintaining that driveway, not to mention my own personal time. And so needless to say, we needed to figure out a way so that my mother-in-law could stay there. And we decided to apply for a short-term rental. Actually, we thought because it was a owner, we considered owner occupied since I'm there daily taking care of the property and my mother-in-law. And so we were unaware, but once we got the notice, we applied for the special use permit. And again, I live 5 minutes away and I'm there daily. We believe that we have addressed most of the concerns. I do want to say thank you for sending it back to planning and zoning. It gave us an opportunity to revisit this application and revisit some of the concerns. I do know that we have had a couple of conversations with the fire department. I've also had a couple of conversations with planning and zoning. There was a concern about fire being able to get back there. The comment was made that all of the homes in that area sit so far back, they would actually use a brush truck to get the crew back and then connect hoses from the street. And so their large tanker trucks wouldn't even go back there, and that would never be a part of their safety plan. And so their comment was that home is already under protection, we would protect it. And so I do also believe that we have found the easement agreement. Staff has been able to take care of that. And I was able to have a great conversation with my neighbor, Steve, as I was actually repairing the driveway from a heavy rain about 3 days prior. He came out, asked me what was going on. I explained to him that this isn't an enterprise to make a ton of money. This is just to help keep Janice in the home. And he said, I apologize, I had no idea. And he said he immediately went to the courthouse the next day and had a notarized letter in support of our special use permit. And so I do appreciate the opportunity to be back here tonight, and I hope that we can pass this and have a short-term rental at 6115 Oak Grove Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mo. I will now open the public hearing. I will ask if there's anyone. Madam Clerk, do we receive any notifications from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item?
No comments received.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this item? Let the record show nobody step forward. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in favor of this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will ask the clerk if there are any notifications received from the public who wish to express their comments in opposition to this item.
No comments received.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
Hi, my name's Meredith Casares. My address is 4925 Metropolitan Avenue. My mom lives at 6113 Oak Grove Road. Have a letter. I'm gonna read a letter, since I sent it in to Mr. Han last week, and I'll read it. My name's Meredith Casares. I'm the daughter of Francis Howard, who lives at 6113 Oak Grove Road, the neighboring property to 6115 Oak Grove Road. I have been to every meeting concerning this proposal and have mentioned that my mom is elderly and lives alone on Social Security. My dad too died in 2020. My great uncle built that house at 6115 Oak Grove Road. My parents have lived in that house for 50 years. My mom, my dad has done all the remodeling, upkeep, everything alone on that property. They own 10 acres there. And my mom's elderly, so when she gets to the point where she can't take care of herself, which she's doing a good job right now, I plan on living there. The property will be passed down to me and my family. And so it has sentimental value to us. The reason we live there is because it is back off the road a little bit, or the reason my parents bought that house is because it's back off the road. It's quiet, secluded area, not where we want to live where there's a lot of traffic coming and going. And that brings my mom comfort. They like that area. However, the short-term rental for the next door, we would be robbed of this. My parents worked hard for what they have, and my mom should not be stripped of these comforts.
1 minute remaining.
And I also want to say, I have two, we've all lived in Wyandotte County our whole lives, my parents and myself. We graduated from Turner, all of us. My mom worked for the Turner District for 30 years. I mean, I don't see this short-term rental it's not for this residential neighborhood. I also wanted to clarify something from the last meeting was Mr. Beth drove up the driveway at 6115 and got stuck, he said, with his four-wheel drive. And he said, while he was there, he noticed the tree trimming company. Well, that tree trimming company was my mom trimming the trees in that easement property, her property, but on that easement. And also the gravel was my mom's gravel to take care of her personal driveway, and so once again, I just urge you guys, consider your own homes, your own safety, your parents' safety. If you have parents living, how would you like a short-term rental next door to your parents with the extra traffic? I just urge you to not deny this permit. And I also have a letter from the fire marshal saying that I spoke to him, that one of the commissioners wanted to know if I had proof that I'd spoke to him the last meeting. So I do have,
you might want to surrender that to Mr. Hand unless you need it for your records. Do you have a copy of it, Mr. Hand?
no, he doesn't. I just got this morning from the fire marshal.
We'll keep that for records. Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak in opposition to this item? Madam Clerk, is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in opposition to this item?
We have Aaliyah with her hand raised.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah. I live at 108 North 76th Street. My grandmother is the one who is the neighbor to the short-term rental. And our issue with the short-term rental is that there are 3 properties that that share that easement. My grandma's property is one of them. Now, they sometimes use my grandma's private driveway to access the short-term rental because the easement is very narrow and it's hard to get in and out of. And one of the members of the board at the last meeting, he actually drove up and down it, like she said, and he noticed it was hard. So they often do use her private driveway. And now since these meetings have been happening, they have slowed down on that and have started using the easement, but the easement still goes right like feet from her house. And that is a lot of traffic coming and going. My grandma lives alone. She's elderly. She's back in the back. It's wooded area. And we just don't believe that it's safe for her to be having that much traffic. You know, these are strangers. This is short term, just days. And we don't know these people. This is not a neighborhood thing that, you know, strangers are just coming and going. This is meant to be a neighborhood where you know your neighbors. And we just don't believe that it's safe for just strangers to be coming and going any time of day. And we just don't know them. It's just not safe for her. So yeah, that's our issue. And all the extra traffic, basically. Oh,
Thank you,
did you
Ms.
get all that?
Yes, we did. Thank you, Aaliyah.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you. I will ask, is anyone else virtually joining us who would like to speak in opposition to this item?
No other hands are raised.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing on this item. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments? Mr. Mall?
Thank you. Just a couple of points of clarification. I am not aware, I believe the easement, I have not read the easement, so you might have to ask staff, but I believe the easement agreement is just with me and my neighbor Steve. I do not believe the neighboring property to the east has that same easement agreement. So I think there should be some clarity there. And then the gravel that I provided invoices on was never delivered to the property on the east. It was delivered to my property and spread through the easement driveway. I'm happy to get a statement from my contractor if I need to on that. And then the driveway, I do remember what I was repairing. So not only was there a heavy rain that day, but it was also the commissioner's routing out of my driveway that I had to then go spread that driveway back out because he either gunned it as he was going up it or whatever. But it was actually the repairs that I was doing for his access to my property that day. And that's when my neighbor came out and, you know, I have an SUV. My dad has a Ford F-150, 250, and we get up and down that drive all the time. It is not narrow. I actually spend a couple times a year widening it because the Mother Nature likes to grow into a driveway because that's where the sunlight is. So anyway, I just wanted to make some points of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mall. Any questions, comments, committee? Commissioner Hill?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have a couple questions for staff. Number one, does the applicant have the approved licensing and rental licensing that is required?
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. So this was one of the cases that was caught in the zoning blitz that we did after the short-term rental ordinance. And so there was effectively a grace period to come in and get an SUP, which Mr. Mall again has been trying to do for the last few months. If he were to receive the SUP, he would need to go get a business license. Yes.
So the answer is no, he doesn't have it now.
He doesn't have a business license because he doesn't have a business. There's no short-term rental without the SUP.
Okay, so, but is running it as an Airbnb and has had guests in, is that correct?
Prior to the notice of violation, yes.
Okay. And it said, could you explain this part that says he changes it to a 30-day booking? Could you explain that a little bit for me?
So a short-term rental by ordinance is anything that you rent for 29 days or less. Anything 30 days or more is a long-term rental. And all you need for a long-term rental is a rental license. So when he was informed that he could not have a short-term rental without a special use permit, he turned it into a long-term rental.
Okay,
Thereby, that's why it's 30+ days on Airbnb.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time being in support of this just because I have a dually, I have a big truck. And I drove up that driveway. And I did have to put it in 4-wheel drive, but I couldn't go all the way because now my fenders, there's like a hill wall, and without scratching my truck and making things worse. And then also this house sits, it sits 772 feet off the road. So here's the thing is if a brush truck tried to eat, a brush truck didn't, I mean, they're thinking they can, but until something goes down, they're going to find out really fast that they're going to get stuck. So a pumper would have to sit and drag out 800 feet of hose. I mean, if a resident wants to live back there, I get it, but now it'd be a commercial. And now, God forbid, but that's my only, opposition on it is just the safety factor that, like I said, I drove up that driveway and I couldn't go all the way back. So I think.
Okay. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. To provide Commissioner Hill some background on the STRs and your questioning. When we were going through the process of rewriting and reforming our STR ordinance, we found that there were many short-term rentals that were not registered with the unified government. And in return, after we passed the STR, Director Hand, he referred to a STR blitz. They went to all of the unregistered STRs and gave them the opportunity to be a fully registered STR with the unified government. And that's what this application is. They were one that was operating, but now they're wanting and coming to us for an opportunity to be an official STR registered with the unified government. Just to provide that little bit of background information as we went through this. This STR touches on a subject that Commissioner Bynum and I have had conversations with, and I've had a conversation with another community member of having shared driveways of NSTRs, and that was something, as Director Hand said, is maybe something that may be coming up as for further discussion when we do the review of our current short-term rental ordinance. At this point, I'm not sure where I would vote on. I will just leave it there for now. I want to hear from other commissioners, their thoughts and comments before I say anything further. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move forward, I do want to close public comment if there's no other person to speak. And I'll get back to the commissioners. Commissioner Townsend, I am closing the public comment. That is a closing of the public comment. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Point of clarification for me, the action by the committee that heard this previously to us was to approve for 1 year the request. But as I look through here, I noticed that staff recommended denial. Can you summarize why, what that was about? And then again, I note that we're in the same situation, that if this was to be denied, we don't have a full complement to do that. So I'd ask for guidance from legal too for pro tem.
Yes, it would take 8 votes to override the recommendation from the planning and zoning. And that would mean that the mayor pro tem would have to vote in this matter, as the mayor would if the mayor were presiding.
In this matter, okay.
Yes.
All right. Do we even have the option to send this back? We have heard this before, right?
It's been remanded before. yes.
Okay, so that's not an option, is that, in this case, is that clear? I mean, is that correct? Council?
I think if you had a new reason to send it back, you could. I mean, if there was a purpose.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mean send it back, but hold it over.
You could do that as well.
You could do that. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hand, you were going to speak.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. So staff's position on this one, again, as I sort of alluded to earlier, is perhaps maybe principle in nature. Because we had not thought of this instance when we were initially writing the short-term rental ordinance, because it is silent on what happens or if having a shared driveway is even an issue in the ordinance. We defaulted to a recommendation of denial. There was another case about a year ago. Excuse me. After the short-term rental ordinance where we had another shared driveway, I believe it was in Rosedale. And we also recommended denial for the same reason. That it was not stated in the ordinance one way or another, and that we felt that it was because it was effectively making a private residence a business to share a driveway with another private residence you're doing business with was not in the spirit of that ordinance. But again, I think that is something we've targeted and addressed to address, excuse me, at the May Planning Commission hearing next month when we review that. So I think a little bit is we do our best to be as consistent as possible too.
Okay. And that was the only reason for the recommendation. Thank you.
Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. The question is a technical one. 8 votes to override. The recommendation is for approval. And if by chance a motion here to override fails to get 8 votes, is it approved?
Motion fails.
The motion would fail, yes.
And so
Oh, I'm sorry. You
The
said,
motion would
was your motion for?
if there
Was-
were a motion to override the planning commission's recommendation for approval, and that motion failed, does the finding of the planning commission stand?
No, I think at that point you could still hold it over, send it back. It would not automatically invoke the standing committees, or excuse me, the Planning and Zoning Commission's approval.
So for clarification, if I may, council, what I just heard is that if the motion fails, we can make a motion to send it back to committee.
Or hold
It holds to date certain, whether it be this next planning and zoning or a planning and zoning to whatever, because it has to be date certain. The next question I would have, do we have an item that has set precedents for this under these circumstances, council or Gunnar?
Yeah, the Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. The case that I mentioned earlier in Rosedale ended up withdrawing before a decision was made.
Okay, got it. So thank you.
Technically, no.
Okay, thank you. So just whatever we choose to do, we want to do it fair and equitably and proper. That's what we that would be my guidance as leader of the committee here this evening. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I would agree with staff's thinking on principle. And it's not the applicant's fault that we didn't think of it. It's not his fault at all. He just got caught in the web that we made. And so I don't feel comfortable moving forward when we don't have guidance within our ordinance to allow this type of STR. That's where I stand. Just I don't have a problem with it, with the STR itself. But just because we don't have precedent on it. I don't want to set a precedent for this as we're trying to move forward with reviewing and possibly changing the STR ordinance that we currently have. You know, I know you, Mr. Pro Tem, you just asked if there's any other precedent. There's not, but this could set that precedent.
That's why I asked the question. Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Bynum?
Gunner, if we were to, or legal, if we were to adopt changes as we update the short-term rental ordinance that include no shared driveway, and we hold this to the next full commission meeting and we change the ordinance before it's heard, then we would potentially be possibly allowing a short-term rental that violates our ordinance. Maybe none of that will happen in that order.
I think I'll let legal address that, but before we do, next May, our staff's anticipation for the planning commission is to present the issues we feel need to be resolved. We will not have an amendment for the ordinance prepared in May.
Okay.
And legal, you want to respond to that? My interpretation would be that this item has been heard. It's come before the commission. And we would be taking action to stop it when we have the opportunity now as a commission to either vote it up or down or make recommendations. Legal, you can correct me.
Yes. I'm not sure what the question is, but you're absolutely correct. Now it's the commission's decision to, as you said, vote for or against it or to hold it over. I don't, as Mr. Hand said, there won't be an amendment prior to that, to the next vote. If it were to be held over. But then if it were held over, I mean, there's so many different scenarios, but if it were approved and the code changed between, they would still have their rental license. They would have it for the year if the commission had approved it.
Thank you. Commissioner Bynum?
Mayor Pro Tem, I would make a motion to hold the item to the next full commission planning and zoning meeting.
Second.
May I ask you?
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Commissioner Townsend seconded. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion and a second to hold it over till the next planning and zoning meeting, which would be next month, I believe, the end of May. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
No.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
The vote is 5-2. We'll need Mayor Pro Tem to vote.
I need to vote. We'll hold it over. I vote aye to hold it over for 30 days.
Aye. Vote is 6-2. The motion carries.
Thank you, committee. That takes us to the next item, which is MPL 2024-001 and PR 2024-003. Curtis Peterson. Item C2 is the approval of the master plan amendment for medium density residential to high density residential and approval of a preliminary development plan to construct a 174 garden apartment complex. These items are related, however, will need to be voted on each item separately. Please read, clerk, please read both items. Commissioner Lopez, you have your light on? Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, please read both items.
We have MPL 2024-001 Curtis Peterson, master plan amendment for medium density residential to high density residential at 1300 North 59th Street, recommended for approval with a vote of 6-3. And plan review application PR 2024-003 Curtis Peterson, preliminary development plan to construct a 174 unit garden apartment complex at 1300 North 59th Street, recommended for approval with a vote of 6-3.
Second, will you read the second item too, please?
That was both items.
That was, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I will ask the applicant, no, I'll ask staff to make some opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design, excuse me. Again, this case is being heard in conjunction with Plan Review 2024-003 for 174 apartment unit complex for medium to high density residential. This case also this property, I should say, also previously had received a variance for related to parking. As you all know, this is the second iteration of this project that this commission has heard from previously. Again, the Planning Commission has recommended approval. This is in the planned KCK area, again, right off State Avenue, kind of in the Midtown neighborhood. We have received both support, probably more or definitely more opposition. There are no notices of violation on this undeveloped parcel. Staff agrees with Planning Commission's recommendation for approval with conditions, including following the multifamily design guidelines, a full reconstruction of 59th Street to UG standards from the northernmost property boundary to tie into State Avenue, a sidewalk connection to State Avenue, as well as enhanced landscaping and screening to the north and the south. Additionally, there was a condition of approval added related to, related to traffic calming and providing some support for the rest of 59th Street, potentially the design of the full reconstruction of the portion of 59th Street from the north property line to the south to be defined through a potential development agreement, as the developer will be seeking incentives from the unified government. I would also note in the staff report, there was a typo in factors 1 and 3. It notes that the medium density residential land use category is up to 12 units. It's actually up to 16 units.
I will now ask the applicant or representative to present the application. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Kirk Peterson with Polson 900 West, 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri, here on behalf of the applicant, which is Marion Development. Here from Marion is Shelby Miles in the audience there. Quick reintroduction to the developer. They're based in Kentucky. They were founded 22 years ago. They specialize in all sorts of housing developments across the entire country. They've completed about $500 million worth of residential developments to date. They're proposing here what is a $40+ million residential community. And really the point, kind of the takeaway of that is you have a quality experienced developer that's proposing this project before you deny it. We're gonna have a visual just in a second that Mr. Hand's gonna pull up that shows us the site. It's 9 acres. It's bounded by. There we go. The next slide will show us, give it a nice visual. Thank you, Mr. Hand. On the screen is an arrow that will show you the site. The red arrow indicates the location of the site on the west side of 59th Street. So you have 59th Street to the east. You have industrial uses and State Avenue to the south, as you can see on the screen. You have the Carroll Creek Mobile Home Park immediately to the west of the project, which you can also see on the screen. And then single family development to the north, which is again, just north of where the screen is cut off. You also have 2 access points for this proposed project, both of which are on 59th Street. Next slide, please. The project itself is a multifamily project, as you can see on the screen. There are 6 residential buildings. They're in gray, 3-story in height with pitched residential style roofs, 174 units, as Mr. Hand pointed out in the introduction. There's a clubhouse with outdoor gathering space, a playground area, bike racks, and open space, both active and passive. Mayor Pro Tem, you'll be very, very happy to see that in the southeast corner of the site, all the detention is taken care of, and it's dry detention. Architecture, we have masonry brick, fiber cement siding, which will last for many, many decades, will probably outlast me. And then overall, the point of racing through this, I know you've read your packet, is this is a very expensive, very high quality project proposed in Wyandotte County. Now, who will live here? Part of the project's financing will come from federal low-income housing tax credits. And all of you know this, that means we're able to deliver higher quality, higher cost projects than we otherwise would be able to. But in return, there's a quid pro quo. The project's rents have to stay affordable, more attainable. Generally speaking, for this project, we're talking the $800 per unit per month to $1,600 per unit per month. What does that rent range serve? Online job postings in Wyandotte County recently polled show that this is, for example, various types of UG employees, pharmacy jobs, teachers, entry-level firefighters, bank personnel, industrial employees, and others, again, all pulled just from the Wyandotte County area job postings. These employees are serving, I think you'd all agree, essential functions in Wyandotte County. They deserve quality, affordable housing. And that right now is, again, I don't think there's an argument about this, virtually non-existent. So this project at this particular location is well suited in relation to many of the types of employers I just mentioned with those jobs. It will be a meaningful step in the right direction to provide these essential employees with the options for quality housing that they deserve. So for most of you, I don't think I need to convince you that we in every city in the metro, frankly, in the country, are having a housing problem. We don't have enough of it. We don't have enough quality housing. We don't have housing that people can afford. And this project is a step in the right direction. But the question for tonight, I don't think that's the main question. I think that's background, it's context. The question for tonight is this the right project for this site? That's what you decide tonight. And I'd like to break it down into two topics for your consideration, so you have all the facts to make that decision tonight in an informed way. The first is what has changed specifically since January, when you saw the first iteration, the first draft of this project. That's first what we'll hit. And the only other topic I'd like to hit with you tonight is looking at the relative benefits to the community, specific benefits that this project will have as compared to, we need to evaluate always. Are there any drawbacks or detrimental effects on the surrounding area? So 2 points. The first, again, is what's changed since January? A lot. We certainly left the January commission meeting with some strong comments from few commissioners. Those were taken into account. They were heard. The main point that rose above everything else was 59th Street and its current condition is not compatible with this project. After the January commission meeting, we also had 2 additional neighborhood meetings. One was virtual and one was in person at the junior college. Based on all of that I just mentioned, here are the substantial changes, at least, that were made to the plan since January. First, and definitely foremost, is that we've made a commitment to rebuild 59th Street, as staff pointed out, from the northern property line of this project all the way to State Avenue, well beyond where our property exists. This is approximately a 1/4 mile of public street. It will be 24 feet wide in terms of lanes. That's 2 12-foot lanes, plus on top of that, curb and gutter and storm, to exact UG residential street standards. Like you'd build the nicest neighborhood you'd come up with. This is what the UG would say needs to be done. It will cost more than approximately $1 million to do this. This is highly unusual. For context, if this project is approved tonight and moves forward, as you heard Mr. Hand say, it's not what we're talking about tonight, but we've made clear that we would ask for industrial revenue bonds like every other major residential project we've done, multifamily residential project we've done in the last now 12 years. I would put this in context. The cost of just that road alone will take up most of the benefit of that IRB. Again, just for context. But the developer listened, is stepping up, notwithstanding that high cost, and making the commitment to install a modern, proper, and most importantly, a safe street. Second change, public sidewalk. There's no public sidewalk at all in that area right now until you get down to State Avenue. Developer has committed to building a public sidewalk either down 59th Street, again, the eastern border of the project, or taking a sidewalk over to 59th Place, which you can barely see off to the left of the landscaping, and taking it down to the bus stop at State Avenue. Which approach is preferred will be determined through the final planning process. We're frankly indifferent, but we'll work with staff on that. And again, this is highly unusual. This isn't the typical sidewalk along your property line. This is a sidewalk well beyond your property to try to do a public good and good for your residents to get down to State Avenue with the current sidewalk system. It's not a sidewalk to nowhere, it's a sidewalk to somewhere. Third major change is the proposal for traffic calming. At each neighborhood meeting we've had, which I think totals 3 now, the area residents have shown a concern, probably above everything else. Maybe they'd say it's second most, whatever, but is speeding, especially southbound down the hill on 59th Street that leads to State Avenue. People apparently go really fast. In fact, we've heard of several stories of cars going so fast that they end up in yards over on the east side of 59th Street. So clearly an existing problem for this street. So as part of the IRB process, because it's not really a land use issue, but you need to hear it, it's full context. We have agreed to provide the funds necessary for traffic calming on 59th Street. As drivers approach the hill, they're going southbound, getting ready to go down the hill, to have specifically a road hump and one of those signs that's digital that shows your speed you're going and flashes and colors or whatever when you're speeding. We'll provide those funds. If the UG and the neighbor decide to use them that way, we'd be happy about that. Another major change is we eliminated, we put in place at staff's request a tree preservation easement perpetually forever for the whole northwestern part of the project. So those trees will stay as a buffer no matter what. We also eliminated 6 residential units from the original project. And finally, we agreed to put up a 6-foot privacy fence along the entire southern property line where they have the industrial use to the south. That request is made, so we acquiesced. And then also where the tree preservation area ends on the north, everywhere from there over to the east to the property line, 59th Street, we also will provide a 6-foot privacy fence. So collectively, these changes, they were thoughtful. They were targeted to address the comments that we heard from both neighbors and commissioners and come at a substantial expense. But the changes, honestly, have made this project better, dramatically better, a better project for the community. I said there was 2 things I'd like to present for you to consider in making your decision tonight. That was the first, the major changes, so you can understand how this project has significantly been adjusted for the better since January. The second was to take a look at the benefits of the project for the community and evaluate any potential negative impacts of the project to the community. So probably an obvious paradigm, but if you agree that there are significant benefits and not significant negative impacts, we would hope you'd support the project tonight. But always to be candid, in contrast, if you think there are significant negative impacts caused this neighborhood or the unified government populace in general from this project that outweigh any benefits, then it shouldn't be something you support tonight. But let's start with the benefits. The first is safety improvements. I frankly think this is the most important, and there's a number of them. The first safety improvement is related to, again, 59th Street. We have heard repeatedly, as I mentioned a moment ago, that 59th Street today is not a safe street for anybody, including cars that end up in yards, as I mentioned. So what we're proposing by making a 1/4 mile of 59th Street safe, that is from the bottom of the hill effectively all the way to State Avenue, we're making a substantial change to the safety for residents that live there today and the business owners to the south. Now, as specifically, there was one commissioner who happens to not be here that had a comment in January that said, I'm not comfortable because a fire truck can't pass a garbage truck. So I will be specific to the record. The commissioner's not here, but with standard residential streets now 12-foot lanes on each side, there's plenty of distance for that to happen, for that 1/4 mile that we're improving. Second, on safety, we provide a sidewalk, as I mentioned, to State Avenue. So whether you're trying to get to the bus stop safely or you're trying to walk to school, you can now get down to, if you think about it from the project, you could walk down the sidewalk, you could get to State Avenue, have the sidewalk on the north side of State Avenue and walk over to Meadowlark Lane and go right up to school. The neighbors had brought up a lot, how does somebody get to school that wants to walk? It can't happen now, but it would be able to happen after this project is proposed, given our sidewalk improvements, extensive off-site sidewalk improvements. Again, the funds I mentioned about traffic calming, this is an existing problem. And I will just note for the record, because I think it was part of the written record, as I recall, one neighbor had mentioned, which is their right to do, had mentioned with respect to the funds that the developer would provide for traffic calming, said a traffic hump and electronic speed sign at the top of the hill are not going to prevent speeding. And I'd say respectfully, because again, we're listening, we're trying to just address every issue we can, even those that our project don't cause, right? This is an existing problem. I would just say, how does somebody know that's not going to affect any drivers? I would say, what is the alternative? I only hear a problem and nobody trying to solve it. We are certainly try to put our money where our mouth is and try to help with something that we didn't even cause. That's why we think it's a great idea to put those funds toward those improvements. Next has to do with flooding and stormwater issues. You may have noticed this. I know a number of you, if not all, have driven out, and you've noticed that right around where this project is, there's a point in the road that gets erosion, dirt, mud. It makes it feel even tighter than it even is. And sometimes sitting water. We also have heard from good conversations with the neighbors that just east of that, right, where there's a residential property, there's flooding that happens along that property that's very much related to how the road floods. So this is due in part to, this is from our civil engineers investigation. This flooding is due in part to a broken stormwater pipe that flows through our property, from the neighbor's property, under the road, through our property, and then south to Mr. Rodina's property, if you know the immediately southwest, that industrial property. We're putting in a storm inlet now on the street, curb and gutter, full street, right? Water can go into the storm inlet. And we're rerouting through new pipes, all the stormwater, bypassing Mr. Rodina's property and going to the property to the west, which will absolutely solve all of the issues I just mentioned. So recap, flooding, stormwater issues, we're absolutely tackling those as part of our project. Also, we deliver, as again, we're on benefits. We deliver a high quality housing to essential employees. Now, I spent a number of minutes at the beginning talking about that. I'm not going to hit it again, but I am going to hit it again in terms of emphasis, not details. This is so important. I don't think there's barely a commissioner that will disagree that this is a major issue that this commission, this unified government cares about, providing affordable housing for our essential workers. And that's an absolutely significant benefit of this project. Finally, in terms of major benefits, this project aligns with the comprehensive plan, Plan KC, as Mr. Hand pointed out. As staff stated in the staff report, this proposed project, this use specifically, aligns with the comprehensive plan's important goals of densifying, from a residential perspective, property along State Avenue, creating more residential density in the corridor. It's that density that brings more quality commercial rooftops, bring the commercial along State Avenue, which I know is a goal of everyone. This brings more commercial amenities to residents, and it brings more tax revenues for the unified government. And it continues the march of quality development from west to east down State Avenue. There is a last benefit. The project brings economic benefit to the community. This is a substantial investment of more than $40 million that will generate substantial property taxes for this unified government, even during a potential 10-year industrial revenue bond period, let alone after that. Sales tax from the additional residents and the additional commercial will also be net positive for the economics of the unified government. So I think you'll agree, it is, I'd go as far as to say undeniable that the proposed project will bring real and significant benefits to the community. Safety improvements, flooding improvements, social housing benefits, economic gains. There's lots, but that's not enough. That's not enough to get your vote. You can't just have benefits. You have to evaluate, will there be any negative impacts to the community at the same time? You have to look at both. So finishing with that, are there any negative impacts? And I'm really going off what we're hearing from the neighbors and trying to address that with you. There's two areas. The first is residents have suggested that there will be traffic issues. That's probably the one that's risen to the top in more conversations again and again and again. There's really three things they brought up. One is 59th Street. If you look at the screen and you picture 59th Street, it's right there going north-south, and you have two access points to the right. You can see that's gray, where people will come in and out of this residential development. The question is, will people go south or will people go north? And the residents have, they live there, right? They say, well, there's definitely reasons people could go north. And we've talked about some of those. Some that's been brought up as school. That's probably easier for people to swing around and go to Meadowlark that way than going down to State Avenue. And that's fair. But I will say this, it's very important. I know at least a lot of experience with a number of the commissioners here. We all take traffic studies seriously. We have to pay a lot of money to independent traffic engineers. And then the UG's traffic engineers review these studies and they make comments. We do that for a reason. So you're informed from a traffic science perspective, not just my observation or the neighbor's observation, although you listen to all. We had a professional traffic study done here and the UG approved it, reviewed it, and did not have any, questions about the assumptions or the conclusions. The estimated distribution of vehicles, we're back to the screen, right? Who's usually going north, coming and going to the north, and who's usually going down to State Avenue. The distribution to the north was 10% of total traffic. And it was based on, reading from the study, existing traffic patterns and the surrounding street network. It was their analysis, not my opinion, traffic engineer. So I wanted to put numbers to that real fast. This comes up again and again. Mr. Peterson, you're absolutely putting in a new road all the way to State Avenue. That's great. But what about people that go north, right? What about traffic to the north? So during the AM peak, right? The most traffic that there is in the morning rush, the traffic study says that, and they take, you guys know this, they look at projects like this all over the country. They have data, they go to the manual and they come up with their estimates. They say there will be about 80 trips in the AM peak, 80 trips, 80 people either coming in or going out. That's just over, doing the math, right? Just over about 1 car per minute. Kind of gets in your head how many cars we're talking about. 1 car per minute going to and from the community in the morning rush. That would mean if we take the 10%, right? So of those 80 people in the morning rush, 10% of that, that's 8, right? 8 vehicles in that hour are going to go north. That's about 1 car going north every 7 to 8 minutes. Let's say the traffic engineer's estimate's wrong though. 10%, a little low. Let's make it 30%. That would mean about 1 car in the morning rush going north on 59th Street every 2 to 3 minutes. My point in saying this and going through this sort of thought exercise using the traffic study is not that there won't be anybody that goes to the north, not at all. But it will not be anything that you could consider, or the traffic study, public works, public safety considers substantial or dangerous. The vast majority of residents will go to the south or come from the south, which is why we're putting over $1 million into that 1/4 mile of road. Number 2 traffic issue brought up was that it's difficult when you're heading south as a resident and you're coming to State Avenue. It's hard sometimes to make that left out, right? Because there's cross traffic. And they said people have to wait a long time and there could be major problems with that. Again, the traffic engineer gets paid to go study that, look at traffic counts and come up with a conclusion. And the conclusion was right now, I'll go deeper if somebody wants me to, but I think all you guys recognize the level of service and the grading system. Right now, that intersection, as well as the intersection to the north, is an A and a B, depending on AM, PM peak, which is very high functioning. That's a high level of service, meaning that's really good. A and B is incredible. And in layering in all of our traffic from our site, A and B are not changed at any of those intersections, including down to the south. So again, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm drawing your attention to the details in the traffic study in the packet that spell this out in excruciating, volumes of pages. So I say this, while residents may feel that there'll be, quote, major problems with people trying to go south and make a left onto State Avenue, the traffic analysis did not come to the same conclusion. Finally, on traffic, again, I said it's the most important. It's the one we hear about the most. The third has to do with sight distances. It's a natural question to ask. So if you look at the screen again and you picture someone coming out of either of those drives onto 59th Street, the question you ask is, well, there's a hill to the north and somebody can be coming down. How much are they going to be able to see? Is there enough sight distance? And the traffic study, sight distance is something they evaluate. In fact, the UG has requirements about what sight distances in different circumstances must be. And I'll keep it short and answer your questions if you have them. As the traffic study identified, the distances provided by this project exceed the UG's requirements in this instance for sight distances. Last, character of the neighborhood. This is the other one that rises to the top. We keep hearing that this really isn't right for our neighborhood. It doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. A 3-story, that's what this is, a 3-story garden style apartment project done responsibly is exactly what any planned community like the unified government, or Lee Summit or Overland Park or wherever you're talking about in the metro transitions between single family and more intense uses like Mr. Rodina's industrial property or the mobile home park or State Avenue. Those are all intense uses. And we always buffer, and we buffer with some sort of multifamily, almost always. But I said responsibly done, because again, it has to be responsibly done. You can get it wrong just because you're doing multifamily, you can get it wrong. Is this responsibly done? It's 3-story with a residential style pitched roof, which is meant to blend in with residential rather than having, commercial looking flat roofs. There's privacy fencing, as I described in detail before. There's substantial landscaping, as the staff report points out, that we intentionally stacked, emphasized over on 59th Street. Then the RP5 density, that is the current zoning of the property. We're not asking you tonight, commissioners, for a zoning change, right? The RP5 density that's allowed under the existing zoning would allow up to 259 units of multifamily. You'll recall, we're asking for 174, a ton less. And this zoning has been in place since 1984. And finally, in terms of the master plans, and this, I felt like this has gotten a little confusing in some of the conversations. The master plan right now says, this is me, even though we have the zoning, right? Again, it's kind of confusing. We have zoning, the rights in terms of use and density. But the master plan happens to say medium density. And as Gunnar pointed out, that was the change from the staff report, it's the correction, that you can go up in medium density up to 16 units per acre. And we're requesting high density. So that's one of the two actions before you tonight, changing the master plan. So our project, remember 16 units right now, medium density. Our project is 19.46. So 16 in medium density, 19.46 is what we're proposing. That's the equivalent about over our 8-acre site. That's the equivalent of about 30 units. So how much are we popping above, again, the 16 units? By about 30 units, which is almost exactly one of our 6 buildings. Now you immediately say, well, lose one of the buildings, Kurt. Well, I will look you all in the eyes and tell you that is literally where the financial feasibility happens, is in that last number of units. It can't happen. We deleted 6 units because we were asked, and that was what we can do. We can't get rid of a building. Then why am I bringing it up? I'm bringing it up because I hope everyone in their mind says, fundamentally, I think there's more benefits to this project or there's detractions, you're going to weigh all that out. I don't think you're probably going to say my big issue is there's this major change you want to the comp plan. Not at all. We're right there. We're just above the medium density, and we're talking about 30 extra units or one building. So that's my purpose in bringing that up. And essentially, I'd hope in light of all the benefits discussed tonight, again, that you would see that as more procedural or non-substantive. So in conclusion, this property is already zoned for the project. Developers made substantial changes that we've gone through together tonight since January. The project brings dramatic safety, flooding, social, economic, all sorts of benefits with no real identified specific detriment to the neighborhood or to the area. And it's for those reasons we hope you carefully consider that weighing of benefit and potential detriment when you support both actions, which is a preliminary development plan before you tonight, and then also a master plan change as I described. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for the time, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
We'll go to public comment at this time, Mr. Peterson.
Yes, sir.
The 20-minute closure, I think. What I'd like to do now is go ahead and open the meeting up for public hearing. I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone who has sent a notification from the public who wish to express favor of this item.
No comments received in favor.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. My name is Greg Kendall, President of the Wyandotte Economic Development Council and a KCK resident. I'm here in support of the master plan amendment at 1300 North 59th Street and the preliminary development plan. As stated, it is already zoned for apartments. YDC supports the request before you in part because it helps address the shortage of quality housing we have throughout the community and helps address a number of safety and infrastructure issues at this location. The $45 million proposal before you addresses safety issues that have been largely addressed, but worth noting: speeding cars through speed bumps, widening the street to make it more a safer street to use, sidewalks that don't exist today, curb and gutters that don't exist today. But for this investment via the private sector, I don't think the UG probably has the funds in the budget or anywhere in the 5 or even 10-year budget to make these improvements. We haven't made these improvements for 40 or 50 years. And I think the value of these improvements off-site are over $1 million. Approving the request is an investment in this part of the community and provides quality housing with amenities while paying $1.4 million in property taxes over the next 10 years versus the $1,300 it pays right now. It's rare to see this level of investment in offsite improvements to a project like this, where the incentive that is coming before them is about 1.3, and they're spending $1 million in offsite expenses. Not to count the sales taxes that will be generated from this project from the pilot through BPU and the sales taxes to the city and county. We ask that you vote to support this request, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Is there anyone else present who would care to speak in favor of this item? Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in favor of this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk if there are any notification from the received from the public who wish to express the comments in opposition to this item.
Yes, 2 comments have been received. With your permission, I'll read those now.
Please read, Madam Clerk.
Commissioners, as residents deeply invested in the well-being of our community on North 59th Street, we come before you today to express our profound concerns about the proposed construction of a 174-unit apartment complex by the Marion Development Group. Allow us to emphasize that while we recognize the importance of development for the growth of our community, the scale and nature of this proposed project raise significant questions and considerations that we believe warrant careful examination. Our primary concern revolves around traffic safety. Our street, North 59th Street, is narrow, lacking sidewalks and proper lighting. This poses significant risk to both pedestrians and drivers, especially during emergencies. With the increased foot traffic from the proposed complex, coupled with the lack of infrastructure, accidents are not only likely, but potentially catastrophic. Imagine the difficulties emergency responders would face navigating such conditions. Furthermore, the absence of sidewalks directly threatens pedestrian safety, particularly for our children and elderly residents. It's not just about convenience, it's about basic safety and accessibility. How can we ensure the well-being of our community members if they cannot even walk safely down our street? Their Band-Aid solutions addressing only a segment of 59th Street fails to significantly address our concerns about accommodating a high-density complex on a rural road lacking the essential infrastructure required prior to such a notable development. Environmental concerns also weigh heavily on our minds. The disruption of wildlife habitats and increased water runoff are just some of the potential consequences of this large-scale project. We must consider the long-term impact on our ecosystem and take steps to mitigate any harm. It's not just about safety in the environment, it's also about preserving the character of our beloved community. North 59th Street is more than just a thoroughfare. It's a tight-knit community with deep roots and a unique charm that we cherish. We fear that the construction of such a massive complex will irreparably alter the fabric of our neighborhood, erasing what makes it special to us. Considering these concerns, we urge the commissioners to reconsider the proposed project and thoroughly assess its impact on our community. We believe there are alternative locations better suited for such development where infrastructure and amenities are more readily available. Let us prioritize the safety and well-being of our community over profits. Let us ensure that any development aligns with the values and needs of the people it will impact most. We stand ready to engage in constructive dialogue to find the best possible outcome for our community. Thank you for your attention and consideration. Betsy Rivas on behalf of the residents and business owners on North 59th Street. The last comment received. Some letter in opposition for commissioners meeting April 25th, 2024, summarizing my thoughts on the proposed development at 1300 North 59th Street. The Marion Group, their slogan is people, neighborhoods, community. However, they have refused to engage in meaningful dialogue with the people in the neighborhood and community. Their legal counsel has said that they have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars already, so they must proceed as planned to, my interpretation here, make their profit margins without regard to working with the people, the neighborhood, the community. Their compromise is to drop from 180 units to 174 units. Plan KCK, protect unique neighborhoods by having lower density housing. Medium density housing would be a better fit. Multiple commissioners have said as such, have accessible and safe streets. The unified government of KCK. The commissioners' vote in January was unanimously opposed to this proposal on the grounds of the density and safety issues. What has changed? 6 fewer apartments, the promise of a partially improved street, and an as yet to be determined sidewalk. Our elected officials should be serving and protecting the taxpaying residents of this community. The commissioners and others who have driven 59th Street have stated that the street is not appropriate for the proposed development. It is the unified government's responsibility, not the developers, to assure the safety of its residents. It would seem reasonable to expect an infrastructure upgrade, bring 59th Street up to city code before approving additional development. I am asking the commissioners to deny this project, consider rezoning the land in question as medium density, and assure a complete upgrade to all of 59th Street before any further efforts are made to develop this area. Jean Holland. Those are the only comments the clerk's office received.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So there's no other public notices in opposition.
No other comments were received.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this item? If so, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
Hello, I'm Jessie Villarreal. I live on 67th Street here in KCK. Honestly, I hadn't planned to say anything tonight because I don't have a particular dog in this fight, but because of the last 2 years of me living in this county, I have become quite educated on this whole planning and zoning process, to the point where now I feel like it's beneficial to advocate sometimes for those that don't always know how to navigate the process. So I just want to start by saying that, you know, I think a dangerous precedent is being set when we do things on principle, or we make administrative decisions when there are ordinances that guide principles. There are golden rules that are set out for these particular situations, such as, is this going to change the character of the neighborhood? Does it fit with the character of the neighborhood? And I don't think I have to answer that. I mean, the picture's painted very rosy. I mean, there's been a lot of rehearsal time, so it gets better every time we hear it. But this was unanimously denied in January. So I don't even understand why we're back here, to be perfectly honest. In addition to that, when they talk about, I mean, specifically, he quoted that they were going to upgrade a quarter mile of the road. A quarter of a mile is 1,320 feet. Unless I'm wrong, they are improving 800 feet of road. So not even a quarter of a mile. Now, I could be wrong, but I've read the packet, so I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I feel like at some point, the community members' voices deserve to be heard. They've spoken up and spoken up and spoken up, yet somehow these things just keep getting sent back, and then they get approved another way, or an administrative decision is made to allow it to be approved. Imagine how frustrating that is to people, because yes, sure, it'll bring in tax dollars, but I assure you, this is not being done out of the goodness of their hearts to provide homes for the people that are going to take the jobs that are open. I mean, this is about money, because when the question was posed whether they could do this under the medium density master plan, the comment from the attorney here was that it didn't make financial sense.
1
So
minute remaining.
the last thing I'm going to read is what is part of the process. And this is from the citywide master plan. And I tried to read this at the last planning and zoning meeting, and I was kicked off by Chairman Carson for not being on topic. And then the last time I showed up at a meeting, the sheriffs were called because I was apparently a disturbance there. So I'm going to read it tonight because it is on topic. The third of the criteria of making a master plan amendment is a workshop will be held by city staff to review and solicit public feedback for all proposed amendments. The meeting date, time, and location will be posted in the local paper at least 2 weeks in advance of the workshop. I'm fairly certain that was never done for this. So at what point are we really going to listen to the people whose lives, net worths, equity in their home, safety, all of those things? When are they really going to matter? So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal.
Valerie Webb, 1325 North 59th Street. I have attended every neighborhood meeting, every planning commission meeting, and the full commissioners meeting where it was denied. I have, and others, written numerous letters of opposition. Many of my letters, if you've read them, probably put you to sleep. Bottom line, a high-density complex does not fit the street, that lacks the infrastructure and has limited capabilities to meet the needs of the residents, that ensures safety of all individuals who will travel south and yes, north on 59th Street. 1300 North 59th Street is currently designated as medium density, which I apologize, I read the error that said 12 units per acre, which would lead it to be 96 unit complex, but we were corrected tonight that now it can be 16. That would equal 128 units, if I do my math right, and I'm not a mathematician. That could be literally 4 buildings instead of 6, and they could be 2-story versus 3-story. That would allow for greater green space, for outdoor amenities such as basketball courts, picnic tables, playgrounds, and maybe even a collective garden that would create a sense of community. Hence, a taste of what we currently have on 59th Street. I respectfully request that you deny the amendment for high density complex that lacks the required infrastructure. Thank you.
Hello. Kind of short. I'm Vicky Owens. I live at 1233 North 59th Street. So I get the runoff of both of the hills, coming from the north, coming from the south. My driveway is at the bottom. I've lost gas meters and multiple of mailboxes. So I know what this street is like. Traffic studies, I don't care. So it's going to the south. How many cars are going to be allowed to back up while they're trying to get out onto State Avenue? It is a very busy thing. And during peak hours, how far are they going to back down? But besides that, I have spent hours reading the Kansas City plan or the KCK plan and all of the nice big ideas and the 10 elements. And this does not fit into it. Element 2 is to support the heritage of our diverse neighborhoods. How is this supporting that? We're supposed to protect in element 4, we're supposed to protect the unique qualities in protecting the rural areas. Are we protecting the rural area there? There's beautiful green patch of wildlife. We're not protecting that. And we're not, and element 4 is to prevent sprawling development. What is this if it's not sprawling development? They're wanting to put that many people into 8 acres with the only amenities now that they talk about is a clubhouse and a very small playground for the children. How is that? That to me is like putting people in a zoo or something. They have nothing to do, no place to go. But they do have bicycle racks by each building. But where are they going to ride those bicycles? The sidewalk, okay, that's going to be tricky because they're going to have to cross from the west to the east to get to a sidewalk that will go up to State Avenue. We've already talked about the traffic on 59th Street. How are these people safely going to get across 59th Street? It's not a safe street now with the traffic it has. Put 200 more cars on that street. It's just not feasible.
1 minute remaining.
It seems to me at some point, common sense needs to come into play here instead of greed. All it is greed. Marion saw 8 acres for $200,000. Who wouldn't jump on that? And they don't want to turn it down. You know, they are known for a company that uses tax benefits. They do low income housing that is from, where did I put that? The company produces market rate projects and develop affordable housing through utilization of low income housing tax credits. So, you know, we all pay taxes. I've been paying taxes for 45 years, which have doubled, I'd like to say, in the last 3 years.
Your time has expired.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I oppose this completely. It is just not feasible. Thank you.
Well, here I am again. I am a strong opposer, and the reason for this is because of the fact that we are going to be sandwiched now in.
Ma'am, can we get your name again, please?
Claudine Horton, 1822 North 62nd Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66102. Thank you. We're going to be sandwiched in with these because if you're talking about buildings or apartments at 59th and State, but I'm not hearing Meadowlark Lane. Meadowlark Lane begins at the 59th and Parallel intersection, and it crosses over to State. Nobody is mentioning that. That's the same street. In that particular area, we just had about 4 or 5 years ago, a subdivision that was just built that's right across apartments on Meadowlark Lane. You're talking about apartments going to be at 59th and Parallel. And now this gentleman is talking about 174 units at the corner of Meadowlark Lane. He keeps mentioning 59th and State. Mention what the actual area is, which is inclusive of Meadowlark Lane, 59th and State, which are apartments that's going to be on either corner, headed north and headed south. 59th Street begins after State, headed south. So what we're saying is that we're strongly opposers of this because, like I said, you can become overly saturated with the apartments that we have. We want to live comfortably just like you do. I don't hear anybody complaining about areas in your geographical location. And yet we put people in offices that we feel that'll have our backs. And yet we allow people to come in from outside that takes over and puts what they want to or what someone else votes on to feel that is necessary, which means that we as taxpayers are not being recognized in the geographical locations where we live. I think it's totally unfair. I'm strongly opposers, and voting time will tell the story.
Hello, my name is Frenchie Hooks, and I spoke earlier about the other project. And as Ms. Horton said, this will put our community in a sandwich. We will have apartments all around us on all sides. Unfortunately, I believe that it's easy for someone else that doesn't live there to say, this is okay, this is great. But when you live there, it personally affects you. It's going to personally affect me and all the 33 homes in my home division, in my home association. It's going to affect all of us, and we're going to feel it. And when we feel it, then of course you guys are going to feel it because you're going to hear from us. We oppose it. We feel that you need to look at everything in an open window. Look at it through our eyes. Look at it from where we sit. Thank you very much for your time.
I'll ask again, once again, is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this item? This is your last opportunity. If so, please come to the podium. Let the record show no one else stepped up. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in opposition to this item?
No hands are raised.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now close the public hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments?
Very, very briefly, you heard traffic come up again and again, and I just want to say it's kind of ships passing in the night. I'd ask that you, as folks with statutory duties, right, when we go through these proceedings, to look at the evidence in the record with respect to the traffic study, because I never hear anything specifically refuting or talking about the particular details of the traffic study. It's just feelings that the traffic study is wrong. So traffic's such a big deal here. That's weighing cost and benefits of this potential project and what you think about it. So I'd really ask that you look at the traffic science, which has really gone unrefuted. Two other things. One was just a factual point because it goes to integrity, which means everything to me, especially as I appear in front of this body. There was a suggestion that I had said a quarter mile and it's really 800 feet. The confusion, I understand the confusion. I'll resolve it. Our property line, right, from northern property line to southern property line, as it abuts 59th Street, is 790 feet, so about 800 feet. And originally we had talked about improving one side of that back in January, right? Now what we're talking about is taking that whole segment curb to curb and then all the way down to State Avenue. And if you were to measure it right now, I'm quite confident as you get down that full length, it becomes a quarter mile. So just resolving that factual point in the record. And lastly, and I think this is a good place to end, subject to any questions you might have, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. Under Kansas state law, it says specifically, the Supreme Court said, we can't have a plebiscite. Our property owners, which matter, have every right to come up and talk to their elected officials and speak to the applicant, have neighborhood meetings and share their views, and they should all day long. However, when it comes down to it, with comments like the last speaker, who, with all due respect, says, I'm just saying it will affect us. That's not a rational basis to vote against a plan in this context. There has to be some unpacking. It's kind of like if somebody said, hey, there's too much density. Well, tell me more about that. Density in and of itself is not, I was going to say 4-letter word, whatever that is. It's not a negative word. What about it? There may be problems. Is it traffic? I mean, you could go down the list, right? What is it? So all I'm saying on that point is you do the very important job right now of taking what was this been a 6-month process and many hundreds of thousands of dollars and lots of effort by neighbors, lots of effort by the applicant, lots of effort by you, and weigh it all out. I'd ask that you not go to the more the honestly plebiscite sort of approach of, well, some people don't want it because it might affect them. And look at the specifics in the record and the facts and the traffic science and ask yourself, have I really seen real detriments to this community as compared to all the benefits that I put in the record? Thank you for the additional time.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Okay. Do any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Oh, thank you, Madam Clerk. This will close the public hearing. Thank you. Now I will go to the commissions for any comments, questions. Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, just Mr. Gunner, just a quick question. What's your normal process when after we denied this altogether and we voted it down and now it showed back up? And like a year process where they can bring it back?
Gunner Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. The ordinance states that any changes on or special use permit that is denied has to either significantly change before it can come back for a rehearing or wait a year. There is no special use permit or changes on related to this project.
What's the significant change other than just a couple or whatever, like what, 10 units?
The type of land entitlement that our ordinance says you have to wait a year is not on the docket for this agenda item.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. I want to circle back around to that again. Because I was going to ask the same question for the purpose of making sure the public understands how this is different than the way the ordinance reads when we are dealing with a change of zone or a special use permit. Because neither of those things is what we are dealing with tonight. Is that correct?
Gunner Hand, Director of Planning and Design, that's correct.
And so that is how and why this project can be brought forward again by the developer, basically by asking through your office to bring it forward again.
They submitted another application.
They
That's correct.
submitted another application because there is no waiting period for a master plan amendment or a plan review.
Correct.
Okay, so I hope that helps clarify that, because I do think that a lot of people have really fairly had that question. Can you help us understand this master plan amendment application and how it is juxtaposed against, for example, a master plan amendment where we would follow the criteria laid out in Plan KCK or ordinance that calls for a workshop with a 2-week advance notice? Are these different things is ultimately my question. We had go ahead.
Gunner Hand, Director of, excuse me, Planning and Urban Design. I think, Commissioner, if you're referencing the comment about the requirement to have an extra charrette, that section is in the code is section 27213E. I guess I would say a couple things about that section. One, they're guidelines. 2, they're at the discretion of the planning director. 3, they require a memo be published every year in order to allow the planning director to make that discretionary decision, which we've been doing every year for 4 years that I've been on this employee for the unified government. And it's not required for this project use. The other standard or larger ones are for like area plans or text amendments. This is not
Because
text
that's-
amendments. This is a map amendment.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of where I was headed with it. I have a question for the applicant. The use of the low income housing tax credit process as a potential financing tool out of the 174, is that the correct number?
That's right.
Proposed units. How many of those would be required
Subject to
considered.
the caps under the
Thank
program.
you.
All of them would at different levels. So all the 1 and 2.
And that
three
is
bedrooms would.
why it's an $800 to $1,600 a
Exactly.
month rent structure.
Exactly right.
Okay. And I think it's interesting because there are a lot of people probably in this room, including me, who would say $1,600 a month rent is not affordable housing. It's workforce housing. It's not necessarily affordable housing. But I do think that we have to, as a community and as a commission, we've got to come to terms with the fact that there is not enough housing, period, in this community. The data from our own housing fellow that we asked him to go study tells us that. We know that we lack affordable units by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And we lack unified government employees, partly because we have a residency rule that says if you're going to come work for our unified government, you have to live here. We've got to collectively address, if we're not going to allow developers to use financing tools like low-income housing tax credits and build workforce housing, what will we do to address the rest of the problems that are coming to this community and exist right now because we don't have enough housing units? And I don't have the answer. And I'm not directing that at you so much as just hoping we can all acknowledge there's got to be a way to figure this out. Even if it's not this project, it doesn't mean that problem goes away, because it absolutely does not. In fact, it's exacerbated. So thank you for listening to that.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lopez.
I just want to make a comment too that what I believe in, I can feel everyone's pain here, but I believe people are so skeptical about and holding their breath is, you know, we were painted the same picture about these lofts that are right down the street from us. That used to be the old courthouse. It was nice and dandy for the first couple of years, but now there's all kinds of drug activity and problems. And I think that's what I foresee, and that's what everybody, you know, here is foreseeing. You can paint the, you know, we're getting a beautiful picture painted, but what we're looking at is a long run. So thank you.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. It's gonna come to no surprise to my colleagues. I'm stuck in the middle. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I see the community side and I see the developer side. I would say I wouldn't agree that when it was stated that when the community says it doesn't affect them, it's not, we shouldn't take into account. One of the factors to consider is neighborhood character. And that is an important, one of them, and to me, one of the most important factors that we have to consider when we look at these. It's one of the golden rules. I am stuck in between a rock and a hard place, because I understand the community and your concerns, but I also understand what Commissioner Bynum was coming from, was we need housing, and it's, you know, that's why we're here. That's why we chose to run for these positions, to make these hard decisions and to try to find that common ground, that perfect spot, that sweet spot that everybody, the community can have their home, their peace and their safety, while also we can grow our community. And so I can say I do not know where I stand at the moment. Because I do see both sides, and I know what we need to do as a community, as a city, to grow, but also I know what we need to do to protect and preserve our community and our neighborhoods as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. This project is in my district, in the 8th district, and this has been a very tough process because I particularly do not enjoy a combative relationship between residents and developers. Ideally, we would all be able to work together, get to a point where we can grow our community and have it not be such a contentious us versus them relationship. There's value in the private capital that is being offered and the amenities that are being offered. There's also value in the opinions and perspectives and the taxpayer dollars of the longstanding residents that have come before us. To have those two opposed is not an ideal situation. Mr. Hand, I want to ask you some questions, and I want to get clarity just one more time. Can you explain one more time? And I know Commissioner Bynum talked about this, but I just want to make this crystal clear. We had denied this in January. This has come back. Can you explain how this application was able to come back before us?
Director of Planning resigned. After the applicant was denied, they resubmitted the application.
Okay, and can anybody, if they're denied, resubmit an application if it's for a preliminary review and a master plan amendment?
That is correct.
Okay, so what we are dealing with and what we are talking about is not necessarily unique to this particular project or this particular developer. Any resident, any business owner could resubmit if they wanted to. Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I just want to make that very clear. There were no favors. There was no underhand. It was nothing like that, right? We have some residents of Wyandotte County taxpayers that maybe they don't get it the first time, but the second time they're able to come back and they're able to apply. Okay. I also want to talk about the workshop plan KCK, and some of these things Commissioner Bynum already addressed, but I just want to provide very clear clarification of this because this kind of keeps coming up. The workshop mandate, the public engagement mandate, is for an area plan or is it for any amendment? Can you provide clarity on that?
Director of Planning to resign. The outline of minor, standard, and major land use amendment are guidelines. They're at the discretion of the director, whether an extra neighborhood meeting essentially needs to be happened. So if you think of an area plan, we'll typically update the entire land use map. Most times in the last, at least in the last 4 years that we've been doing them, we make a couple of changes based on known changes in that land use, but nothing necessarily wholesale. It's certainly something we hope to do in the future because it's necessary and typical to do something like that. But the point being, excuse me, the point being, sorry.
The area plan for KCK. It's been a long
Right.
night.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So those area plans have a plethora of neighborhood meetings and charrettes and conversations about land use and transportation and other stuff like that. So a minor charrette, or excuse me, a minor amendment as described in those guidelines are for basically, there's a couple criteria, but anything under 20 acres, anything that's a map amendment. So it doesn't recommend a charrette. I still have the ability, because I file that memo every year as an interpretation as per the code, that I could add one as needed. So we do that every year to have that flexibility if needed. And we felt that public was heard. Applicant responded. Whether they responded enough is the public's opinion and your guys' prerogative to decide. But it is not required to have a special meeting for every master plan amendment. It is required to have a neighborhood meeting, and we did that a couple of times.
Gotcha. So yeah, and a neighborhood meeting did take place for this application. I also want to talk about, for the 8th district, and I think since I've been elected, the need for an area plan. This was discussed in the March Planning Commission meeting. And I think this is kind of the rub in which we are kind of dealing with is there is no area plan, right? Plan KCK was citywide. It's kind of general. There wasn't a specific plan as there was for Rosedale or for Armourdale or some of the other areas. Is that correct?
Yeah, the closest thing for this area that happened was about 10 years ago. They did the Board of Commissioners adopted a state avenue corridor plan. At that time, it adjusted the land use, but not the zoning. Another structural deficiency of our the history of planning in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. So that is why you have the land use categories that say everything abutting state should be mixed use, everything behind that should be a higher intensity use, and then it sort of tapers off, if you will, as described. The zoning at this location has been RP5 since the 80s or late 70s. And before that, when it was in the county, because at the time this was, it used to be the edge of town. Now it's in the middle of our urbanized area. The zoning before RP5, so before that, when it was in the county, it was also zoned for apartments. So it's, as far as we could go back, always been zoned for apartments.
Gotcha. Even with all of the other single family homes and various developments, this area has been zoned for that. I will say, colleagues, I appreciate and value what the developer what the Marion Group is trying to do with this project. With a lack of an area plan, I am having a hard time seeing how this particular project would fit the neighborhood character. I know there's some other conversations that are currently taking place, but as the area commissioner, I just wanted to make that known. That is where my thinking is right now. And I will withhold making a motion based off of that. Just a lot, want to hear other conversations. Thank you.
Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd just like to say, first of all, to our community, thank you for your passion to remain comfortable in your own space. I just want you to know I heard you. I ride by there often and want to move in there. It's never know where to move. I mean, I've been riding in there for years looking for a home for sale. Never. So I understand exactly how you feel. And appreciate every one of your comments. By the same token, I can also say I appreciate what the developer has said to try to accommodate some of the things that you all were requesting also. I'm torn because I understand not in my backyard. I really do. I understand that. But I also know, because I worked in different environments here in Wyandotte County, we are in a crisis as far as housing. And, just like I said, if not in your neighborhood, somebody else's neighborhood that don't want it, or somebody else's neighborhood that don't want it. So I get it, but I just wanted you to know that we did hear you, and certainly appreciate your comments.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, Gunnar, just wanted to ask you a question about if you can explain the density on this, as far as 174 units down just a few from the original, and then the maximum density, should it be 143 instead of 174? Is that the maximum on this? Would that violate the master plan at all?
So Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. The parcel currently is medium, land use designation is medium density residential, which is a maximum up to 16 dwelling units per acre. So the subject property is 8.94 acres. So if you do that math, it's about 143 units are allowed as of right now. They would still have to go through a preliminary and final development plan process to do that, which is a public hearing. And so going over 143 maximum is the trigger to get to, is the trigger that required the request for the land entitlement for high density residential land use category.
So as of. Okay, so as of right now, does it show, does it violate the master plan as of right now? With being 174 than 143?
Yes, they are Gunner Hand, Director of Planning and Design. They are requesting an increase in the land use category so they can build 174 units.
Any other comments? Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. In listening to the evaluation, I was sizing up the reasons, what has changed in the proposal from January 2024 meeting where I voted against it based on comments about infrastructure and other things that commissioners who are more familiar with that area than I said. So I was looking to hear what has changed. Obviously, the location has not. So the developers made a commitment to rebuild 59th Street, quarter of a mile, which I can read my own writing. Equates to approximately $1 million of investment. It's one thing I've learned as a commissioner. I never realized how expensive concrete is. That is a major improvement. And we are, in my opinion, desperate to get roads repaved, not just pothole patched. I know that I did a pothole patrol about a month and a half ago, going from like 80th and Parallel, drove up one side, down the other, and then moved over to State. And most of that is in my district, particularly on the 60th. So I can appreciate the investment that the developer is putting forward. The development of sidewalks, traffic calming, the commitment to install buffers that include tree lines, private fencing, and the negative impacts, the evaluation of, also developer will put in new pipes, drainage to take care of stormwater issues, negative impacts. I heard concerns about traffic. It sounds like there are traffic studies done. I would lean toward whatever the results of that traffic study say, because as a commissioner, I'm looking for objective evidence. People can agree or disagree, but I'm keeping in mind that these studies are done by professionals. Having said that, I'm hearing what the industry commissioner said about the character of the neighborhood. And I'm also evaluating the fact that the zoning, I guess, in this area for a long time has been inclusive of apartments. Apparently, that's not what sprung up first, though. So it is always hard to see a change that may be proposed. But I'll say this, as several of the commissioners have mentioned tonight, one of the reasons we have problems with our tax assessments is the lack of quality and affordable housing across this. So I would invite the developers to remember my district. There are huge sections where there is open space. It wouldn't be as much of a tug and a pull and a twist between those who are there and those who are not. So the developer, I'm making a shameless pitch to remember my district in the area. So I just wanted to get those comments on the record. I think those who came out tonight to talk about this project and the other. Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Horton, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt your comments. Just a couple of thoughts that are on my mind. I think the Countryside West neighborhood is beautiful, and it truly is. I've been in a number of those homes and they are wonderful. I remember the deep freeze of the January meeting where the first vote on this project took place. And I'll never forget it. Because on that night, we turned down a desperately needed assisted living complex. We turned down these housing units, and in that same evening, we were so proud to allow a laundromat at 18th and State, and we embraced it as the key to the revitalization of our downtown. And I remember when that meeting was over, just scratching my head, you know, what just happened? And I've been scratching my head ever since. We may not approve this project tonight. And if that's the will of this commission, then so be it. But I will return to my earlier statement. We do not have enough housing units in this county, period. And if it's not this project, then we must come to terms with where shall we build affordable and workforce housing. We've been given the comment tonight that there are other alternatives. This project is 1/4 mile from the transit line that is the main transportation line from Independence, Missouri to the Legends. It is within the top 10 busiest transit routes in the entire metropolitan area. So if this is not an appropriate place to build out more housing, then I'm entirely open to where that place is. So I will obviously abide with the decision of this commission. I truly will. And I appreciate working with each and every one of you. And that is a true statement. But I will not stop advocating for more housing for the people in this community who need it at a variety of income levels. I will not stop advocating for that. So I guess I will go on the record right now of saying for everyone to hear, this community lacks a significant number of housing options. And I hope that we can work together to solve that problem when we have developers such as the one in front of us tonight coming forward to bring us projects that not only provide dollars into our tax base, fill a gap that exists, whether you want to admit it or not, and try, from what I saw between January and now, to address some of the serious and legitimate concerns that the neighbors brought forward. I understand that this 8 acres is somehow seen as rural. It's not. It's 59th and State Avenue. There is all kinds of uses along State Avenue. It's a commercial corridor. So I deeply appreciate the homeowners who live, especially along 59th Street, who like the fact that for more than 40 years, they've been able to live in the middle of our community and not have development come around them. I do appreciate that. I just hope that we can recognize that we have got to deal with this problem one way or another, or we're just going to lose all the way around, period. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to clarify something. 1,300 is what it's bringing right now a year on taxes, on property tax. What was your abatement? Did you have an abatement that, I'm sorry, I missed that. What was the abatement on this that was on this? Would you know? I mean, I just realized that.
Commissioner Lopez, this process happens first, and then the process of proposed industrial revenue bonds happens where there could be an abatement. But because there's been a record in another project that went before, approximately rough numbers, $230,000 in taxes, and then half of that would be abated for 10 years and increases every year. But again, to be clear on the record, I'm answering your question because you're asking it,
Right.
But that wouldn't come until after tonight.
Right. I mean, if everything was into place, it would be
Yes, sir.
115.
100, something in that
50,000,
range,
something
yeah,
like
plus or
that.
minus. Yep, and then full after the 10th year.
I mean, I'd be more in supportive if there was no abatement at all. Just cough up to 230 and we'll rock and roll. But
The hard part is as you know, I'm not teaching you this, I'm saying.
Well, no, I get it. I
It's
get it.
separate, it's a separate process than this.
right, no,
in
I
the sense
get that. It's just that we still got to come up with that extra on everybody else, all the residents, with all the tax payment that's going on across the county. But I'm just saying that's what.
Given that sequence, Commissioner Lopez, if I may, that's if a commissioner, I'm not speaking about you because you have to, it's your brain and your vote. If a commissioner felt that way and they like the project, the commissioner may consider voting for the land use and voting against the public incentives. But again, just hypothetical.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And yes,
Council.
yes, and when matters are on the planning and zoning, you are in a slightly different role than when you consider the incentives. You are in the quasi judicial role.
Thank you, Council. Ms. Horton, some of the other people have left that I wanted to visit with, but I want to thank you for coming forward. Having grown up in that particular neighborhood, I understand the dynamics. There are some beautiful homes down there, and there is development all around that area. It's been controlled development, the school district with the new stadium. It's been apartment buildings that have gone low income onto the little bit further east, as well as along the corridor there, along the south, I'll call it the south side of State Avenue. Those areas down there. I guess I'm hearing there's been a lot of discretion left up to by the planning and zoning personnel in reference to interpretation. So when we're talking about low income tax credits, so I guess my question would be, having set up here, this is the second or third low income tax credit issue we've had just recently. I'd like to know how many more are coming so that we know how many more homes we're going to have to build that are low income. Because I don't believe all the people that are in Wyandotte County and are coming to Wyandotte County are going to be low income. And please, we want to have decorum. Having grown up in this community, I've seen what low income housing has done to us over the decades. This is the perception that individuals like me have in my mind in reference to low income. I would be supportive of low income if we got rid of some of the older units that are out here that have been referred to, even in tonight's testimony, as concerns and problems within the community. Or heaven forbid, they even be 55 or older to take some of the burden off of our senior citizens in Wyandotte County. We have a lot of senior citizens in Wyandotte County. What concerns me greatly is the saturation that we're putting them in one location, in one district. And that concerns me greatly when that district has survived all of these years without this happening. And I want to say thank you for giving our community consideration for your project. I don't believe that all low-income tax credit housing is what we need. We need moderate rate income to raise the wealth in this community so that the ratepayers and the taxpayers that are out here are on even footing with everyone else. And if all we're building is low income, then we need to talk about what kind of jobs we're creating here. What kind of incentives are we giving for the jobs that we have to go out and build housing now for low-income ratepayers? I'm concerned about the discretion that was given by the planning and zoning director into why this came forward again after it was unanimously killed by this commission.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. That was not discretion. The ordinance only allows us to not hear a case if it was denied for a change of zone or a special use permit. That is not the land entitlement that's before us. There is nothing in the ordinance that prevents me or gives me discretion to deny somebody to reapply for an app for these types of land entitlements.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. If I misspoke, I apologize. I'm just going by what some of the testimony I heard here this evening, that some of those that were already here that testified got to leave. We heard 30 minutes of comment from the developer, and we only gave 3 minutes apiece for the taxpayers and the people of this community that voted for us up here. And that's my concern, is when we talk about fairness and equity in public comment. So I just want to ensure that people in this community know that not everybody believes that low income tax credit housing is the answer to our housing needs in this community. We have plenty of vouchers. I've met with the HUD developers. They have plenty of vouchers available. Landlords will not accept them. And that's the issue. That's some of the issue we have. So we need to look at other alternatives besides saturating our community with low income tax credit housing until we can get rid of some of these older units that are in our community that are drawing down the resources such as police and fire and infrastructure needs and dangers within the community that many of them have stated here this evening. I know 59th Street. I pulled a number of people out of car wrecks on that street as a young man. I even had an accident on that road and rode my first car at 59th and Parallel because of the roadway. And it's a dead end as you go north on 59th Street, not Meadowlark Lane. It's a dead end on 59th Street going north. And if you don't make the turn to get out onto Meadowlark Lane, you are going to be a statistic and you're going to have a major incident. I'm just very saddened to see that we have had residents push against this development to the extent that we unanimously pushed it back, only to have it here again this evening. And we're considering once again putting a number of low income tax credit housings in an area, in one or two areas within our community that is, for whatever reason, justified by the fact that we have a developer says we need them. So thank you for coming this evening. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm very passionate about the community we have. I value your residency here. I value the communities you have. Please know that as this item moves forward. Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
It's quite the campaign speech there. I want to get, I want to.
Excuse me, I'm gonna shut you off.
I want to get back to the conversation that we were having, because we are in our quasi judicial role. We're not talking about low income, light tech or anything. We are talking about these two planning and zoning items. So I'm going to get back to that because that is why we are here. I will move to deny this application based off of lack of conformity to neighborhood character and lack of conformity to the master plan.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Make just one comment. Person's a person, no matter income level. Just want to say that. Thank you.
I've sat here as Mayor Pro Tem this evening, listening to all your comments. I have the same right as each and every individual elected body up here to make my comments. I didn't attack any one individual and specifically. So I talked to staff. I'm not going to sit here and play this game that he said, she said. We are doing public policy here. If you were offended by my comments, that's on you. I could have been just as offended by your comments that came forward. I had my chance. I gave you the respect to listen to you and let you speak before I made my comments, to let the process move forward. So if there's an apology necessary, it should come from the body that attacked another person on this committee. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to say, regardless of the outcome on this, I wish, and this is out of our control, the low income tax housing credits were named by the state. I believe we didn't name it.
Federal government. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that sets up a visual that may in fact not be true about who will occupy such dwellings wherever they are. If the state had said housing tax credit, nobody would say anything in terms of what they may be visualizing. So my comment is we should not be vilifying a group of people or looking into crystal balls that none of us have about the future. And I think this is a technique that we will desperately need to help us get housing to close this gap of areas that are just vacant. Maybe it's right for this location, maybe it's not. But as we have these discussions about what the state has called low income tax, I hope we clear our mind as to what that will look like with who will go. When you hear about the rent range for this group, again, $800 to $1,600 is not what I would think would be low income. Again, thanks to the residents who came, thanks to the developer. Don't forget District 1 with, further plans for development, because we have areas that are not nearly as densely populated. So let's talk. Thank you. And you are doing a good job in a hard situation, Mayor. This is learning, Mayor Pro Tem, this is learning for all of us. So we can just get back to the business of taking the vote. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend. Any other comments or concerns from the commission? Commissioner, would you restate your motion?
Yes, this is Commissioner Davis. I'm voting to would be overruling overriding the approval of the Planning Commission and deny this application based off of neighborhood character and the lack of conformance to the planned KCK master plan.
I have a motion and a second before we take that vote. Council, could you advise us on how many votes we need to override?
Sorry, you will need 8 votes to override, and there are 2 votes to be taken for the 2 items.
So this goes back to the dilemma we had earlier this evening. So,
Yes, you would vote on this round then, as the mayor would if the mayor were presiding.
and I just want to make sure that the public knows and those in attendance, this motion is to deny the approval of this planning and zoning parcel. Is that correct, Mr. Commissioner?
Yes, Commissioner Davis. Yes, that is the vote.
Okay, thank you. Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I can also clarify, this is for the master plan amendment 2024-001.
Yes, this,
Thank you.
just one clarification from the commissioner to deny the planning and zoning committee's yes vote.
Yes.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Stites, Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
No.
Townsend,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
thank you. Burrows,
Aye.
vote is 7-1, but motion fails.
Ladies and gentlemen, please know that we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Point of clarification,
Motion.
did the motion fail or did it pass?
The motion failed.
The motion failed.
It needed 8 votes. There's 8 of us. It got
Oh,
7 votes.
This was. to
Failed by a
override.
vote.
Thank you.
So the commission can discuss further. They can vote to hold it over. They can vote to approve. They've got several options.
Commissioner Bynum.
I would be willing to make a motion to hold this to the May full commission planning and zoning meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to hold it over till next month's planning and zoning meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Would you please call roll?
Roll call, Hill,
Sorry.
Aye.
Lopez,
No.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
vote is 6-1, the motion carries.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. I would make a motion to hold the item D1 plan review application that accompanies this to the May full commission planning and zoning meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments, concerns from the commission? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill,
Aye.
Lopez,
No.
Stites, Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
vote is 6-1, the motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience with you. I know it's late in the evening, but that is the end of our planning and zoning agenda. That concludes the portion of tonight's meeting. We will now move to the regular portion of our agenda. And that is the mayor's agenda, items number 1 and item number 2, proclamations. Clerk, please read.
Proclamation. Now therefore, I, Tyrone Garner, Mayor, CEO of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, do hereby proclaim May 5 through 11, 2024 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, and urge all citizens to recognize Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Proclamation. Now therefore, I, Tyrone Garner, Mayor, CEO of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2024 as Arbor Day in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do any members of the commission have any questions or comments in reference to the proclamations? Seeing none, that takes us to our regular consent agenda. Does any member of the commissioner, county administrator wish to set aside any item on the regular consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all other items on the regular consent agenda will be voted on by one vote.
Move to approve as submitted.
Davis, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have the standing committee agenda. Item number 1, approval of the fiscal year 2025 Adult Community Corrections Kansas Department of Corrections grants. The first item under the standing committee agenda is approval to accept the fiscal year 2025 Adult Community Corrections Kansas Department of Corrections allocation. This item was heard by the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee on April 22nd, 2024, chaired by myself. The committee approved the item with a vote of 5-0. It's a non-participation grant, so there's no funds required by us to accept the grant. And this is for adult funding, and I believe the legislature will set the amount, which is somewhere around $2 million, a little north of that, quite possibly.
Bynum, move for approval.
Townsend, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis. Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Vote is 6-0. The motion carries.
Thank you, committee. Item number 2 is the approval of the 2025 Juvenile Community Corrections Kansas Department of Corrections grant. And I believe this one is for about 1.5. Should the legislature approve that, could be a little bit north of that. But again, it's a non-participatory grant. No money is required on our part.
Bynum, move for approval.
Townsend, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Would you please call roll?
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis. Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. This takes them to the administrator's agenda. We have one item on the administrator's agenda, which is the approval of the reappointment of Octavio Estrella to the Reach Healthcare Foundation's Board of Directors. Does any member of the commission have any questions or comments?
Bynum, move for approval.
Townsend, second.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis. Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Committee, that concludes the portion of our regular meeting, and I adjourn us in that capacity. I will entertain a motion to adjourn as the Board of Commissioners and ask us to back in order of the Land Bank Board of Trustees.
Move to adjourn.
Okay. We have a motion.
Point of,
Oh,
was that move to adjourn or was that move to?
concludes the portion of our regular meeting, and I will adjourn us in that capacity. I'm sorry. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn as the Board of Commission
Okay.
and call us back to order as the Land Bank Board of Trustees.
So move Bynum.
Okay, David,
Townsend,
second.
second. Thank you.
Thank you. It's fine if I'm moving too fast. I appreciate the clarification. No, thank you. We should all be on the same page. I appreciate that. I'll do my best to slow down a little bit. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn as a commission and come back as the Land Bank Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. We are now adjourned. Now we are reconvening. We have one item under the Board of Trustees consent agenda this evening. Now, does any member of the commission or county administrator wish to set aside any item on the Land Bank consent agenda?
Mayor Pro Tem Bynum would move to approve the land bank options.
David, second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. With no further business to come before the governing body, that I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move. Townsend.
Second, Ramirez.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. We are officially adjourned. I would just like to state thank you for your patience with me over the interim as Mayor Pro Tem. I consider it a privilege and honor to work with each and every one of you. And I do hope tonight's business, as we move forward, that we continue to look at open communication and transparency. Our community deserves. It's been my pleasure to serve with each and every one of you. Thank you.